OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.
And a very good morning to you. Welcome along this Monday morning to OTB AM. It's Ger Gilroy and Owen Sheehan with you all the way through until 10 o'clock. A really busy show. John Molloy is going to join us to give us his thoughts on Colin Morikawa winning the US PGA at the weekend last night. He's 23, he's an absolute superstar, a young phenom of the game that we're going to see a lot more of over the next while, and fairly dramatic and spectacular victory it was by 2 strokes, including a very late eagle to win things late in the morning for us. So a lot of you probably just waking up this morning to find out exactly what happened. Dustin Johnson finished second on 11 under, 2 strokes behind Morikawa on 13 under. Paul Casey also made a run to finish second on 13 under. We'll get you the full details of exactly what happened. Rory McIlroy faded away. Brooks Koepka finished with a final round of 3 over par to completely fall away. And Jason Day, Matthew Wolff made it to 10 under alongside Bryson DeChambeau, who had a good final round of 66. 266 is the final 2 days for DeChambeau to get himself somewhat into contention, but not enough to get him over the line. And that was the top, rounded out the top 4. Justin Rose finished 9th on his own on 9 under par. So that was the golf. We'll get into that and the details of it from Joe Molloy a little bit later on, around about 20 past 9. We'll do deal or no deal with Phil Egan around about 9:40. We've got our pressure rankings coming your way at 9 o'clock. Sports pages and top stories around about 8:35. Graham Hunter is going to join us at 8:15 after another spectacular moment from Leo Messi, which probably wasn't even the highlight of the weekend in some respects about the football, but it certainly sets up things for the quarterfinals of the Champions League, which will take place night after night after night this week. It's going to be a brilliant week of football, and we're going to preview it all every day. We're going to start today with Graham Hunter at 8:15, and we'll really run you through everything else. But first up this morning, we're going to be hearing from free diver Claire Walsh in a few moments. First though, it's Brendan O'Brien and Cian O'Connor with Joe on the Sunday pay-per-view. Enjoy.
The players' body have written to members. They've recommended a radical redrawing of the GAA fixture schedule. They want a split model that would give clubs an unobstructed window between August and December. GPA's already signed up to a report published by the Calendar Fixture Group, which presented 3 options for reforming the calendar and competition structure, none of which were based on a split season model. However, in the aftermath of this year and COVID and seeing what it's like, the players' body now believe that there is an appetite for a similar structure post-COVID-19, and that's what they're going to go after. Sustainable amateurism, they say, is designed to allow you to achieve better balance in your life, off and on the pitch. So that is a big turnaround, Brendan O'Brien, if the GPA are now looking for an end to inter-county action July every year and from next year as well.
Yeah, and my initial take on it is that it's so simple. You kind of think, well, why hasn't this been a bigger debate before? I mean, there's a lot of very obvious plus points that can come out of this. I mean, the most obvious one being that you're finally freeing up a significant portion of the year for the club player and for the clubs as well. I mean, the club v county thing has been tearing the GA apart in one form or another for a long time now. And even the inter-county season itself could do with a more defined structure, I feel. There's a lot of talk in the GA in recent years, going back a couple of decades, certainly since I've been covering the GA as a sports reporter, that there's this reluctance to give up an extra chunk of their season, that you're giving over that window frame to, football and rugby and other pastimes as well. But different models, different sports, different countries. But we see in Australia with AFL, we see it in America with NFL. I mean, they have much shorter seasons, and if you define that and if you package it properly, and by packaging it properly, you're talking about a proper structure in there as well. We don't want to talk about structures, I'm sure, on a fine Sunday afternoon. But that all has to come into it as well. It's not a magic bullet by just putting it into a framework. Within that framework has to work as well. But you do that, you can go back to sponsors. You have a better product, not just for your inter-county game, but suddenly you've got your club game. Imagine club players knowing every year, I'm going to be playing club hurling or football in August. It won't just be a case of seeing these fantastic club teams playing in the dead of winter. So a lot of positives on it, I see. But like you touched on, Joe, it's hugely radical. And the nature of the GA is that we see things happen incrementally. And former Director General Pádraig Duffy, I always remember chatting to him about that, and he said it on record as well, that that's the nature of the beast, and it is a big beast, and it takes a lot of time for this stuff to go through.
Yeah. Brendan, to what extent, though, do we need to be careful about what we're wishing for here, or what we're wishing into existence? Like, so looking across the Sunday papers, there's this brilliant picture of Conor Callaghan here in his helmet playing for Cooley yesterday, and aside from that, there is not a word on all the GAA action which is happening across the country, not a jot. None of the columnists are writing about the club action. You know, the columnists who talk so much about the glory of the club, they're not writing about it. So, you know, imagine a situation where from next year, come July, that is it for the inter-county season. GAA will disappear then from visibility for the next 6 months. I mean, there won't be a jot about GAA in the papers across July, across August, across September, and you're putting the finale of the season, which will still garner attention, but you're putting it up against the finale of the Premier League, the finale of the rugby, to a lesser extent maybe the finale of the Champions League. So I accept, absolutely, it will be better for the club player who is planning a holiday in August, or who wants to know when they can go and when they can't go. It's definitely better from a participation point of view, but you really got to look at what you're giving up here. You know, all the wonderful traditions of summer and GAA and inter-county colour and a build-up to late August as it is now, or September. For that just to disappear, like, do we all love the club scene that much? Are we all watching the club scene that much? Have you watched many club games over this summer?
No, I haven't. That's a very fair point. I think when you're looking at the question of balance, if we're all being honest, you know, the viewership numbers for club championship are very, very low, relatively speaking, compared to the inter-county. That's got to be expected. I mean, you know, you're not going to have as many people interested in a club as opposed to a county. It's not got the bells and whistles of the county game. But what you have to ask is the balance right the way it is at the moment? The balance is completely skewed towards the inter-county game. And this goes back to the image of the GAA and how it thinks of itself. It's a club-first organisation. The balance has to swing back in favour of the club at some stage, because it is a crisis point, and everything we've heard from everybody in any position of authority, from players, from inter-county players, they will admit that the club is losing out, that they are losing out by not being with the club. And it goes back to the point I made, one of the points I made earlier, Joe. The framework, that 6 months, is obviously going to stick out with people. We're losing 2 or 3 months from our season here. But that's why I say it's not just that frame. It's what happens within that frame. It has to be packaged correctly. And I believe, and I think most people would accept, that you can frame this better. The structures can be better. We can get more sense on the inter-county season. It can work better. You can get a link between league and championship that can work better. You can give teams defined times when they're playing. You can be an inter-county player and you can look and say, I know 6 or 7 weekends stretching into maybe June where I know I'm going to be playing inter-county GAA. I know come August that my club has this system in front of us. So you will lose something, there's no doubt about it, and there is a step into the unknown. But the balance as it is at the moment just isn't there. It has to be redrawn towards the club scene in some shape or form. There has to be some give and there has to be some take.
Cliona, you're at the coalface. You're working with the Dublin Hurlers. You've been a player in your day. Does the idea of a July end to the inter-county season from next year grab you as a good way to go?
It's challenging to know, Joe, what's the best option. I think players, coaches, everyone involved, what we really want all the time is certainty. It's the uncertainty that's a challenge, from preparing teams, from preparing yourself as an athlete. And I think what you articulated there is, it's the fear that everybody has right now. The GAA, from a commercial media point of view, all of that, we enjoy most of the year, really. You'll get a little bit of a Burn Cup coverage, you'll get league, you'll get provincial championships, then you'll get August, September All-Ireland final. So you really dominate a huge part of the year, and there is a fear to give that element up. Brendan's point, though, about the clubs and trying to, everyone's saying the balance needs to swing back, but the point is, the clubs, when you're measuring it, success or the right choice, when you're measuring that on a commercial point of view, the clubs don't deliver like inter-county delivers. So it depends on what you're prioritising. From a coach's point of view, the big thing that we want, and as I said, is certainty. I don't, from a coaching perspective, I don't really care whether the season is 6 weeks or 8 weeks or 12 weeks, but once you know and you know exactly what you're dealing with, and the tidier that is, the better. In various sports, some are long, some are short. It doesn't really matter. You just deal within the parameters of your season, and that's possible.
We've seen there on the back page of the Mail as well, Kildare Offaly Laois see fixtures halted. I mentioned Pat's Ballon on the back page of the Sunday World, not happy with Neffet, not happy with the decisions being made. Brendan, you picked out one or two pieces as well. I think Colm O'Rourke is more in the Spillane camp than anything. Eamon Sweeney is a bit more understanding of the situation, I would say, and less critical of Neffet.
Yeah, I think that sums it up pretty well, Joe. I think when you read any of the pieces at the moment, even in a sporting context alone, you do get the sense that we're all trying to grapple the various different strands in it all, in a sporting context, in a wider context, and it comes across in both those pieces. But I think you sum it up well. Colm O'Rourke is more in one camp. Eamon Sweeney kind of, he can see a bit more sides of the argument. Just a couple of the points that stood out for me from Colm's piece. He was talking about how the GA was expecting, the bump up in limits inside rounds to 500, and he uses the phrase, it looks like the GA was sold a pup, and that the NFET and not Cabinet are making the decisions. Now, to me, that kind of overlooks the fact that this is a very fluid situation. It's an obvious one to say, but I think language like that, kind of simplifies it a bit. He also says at one point the GA should be left to run its business, and a limit of 500 would still be very safe in big grounds. And I think in both pieces it makes the point about what's been highlighted is it's not just in the grounds. In fact, it's not in the grounds. You can still socially distance with those numbers in any of our big stadiums. It's what happens when you're going to and from grounds. People are stopping off in these motorway service stations. You don't need to be an expert in science to know what's going to happen there. I thought Eamon Sweeney's piece was really interesting. He makes a point one way and then he makes it the other, and that's in a good way. I hasten to add, it was, he talks in a very general sense about the meat factories. He talks about we're the only EU country that's letting in American visitors. He basically draws the line through the entire leaving certificate. It's not that important, which I think overlooks the social aspect of schools and getting kids back in. But he does make the point as well that residents of rural Ireland and sports fans should resist the temptation to regard ourselves as uniquely hard done by. And he makes the point of the arts as well, which is completely crippled by the fact that it's an indoor pastime, and how he would miss seeing things in the Cork Opera House as much as he would in Porky Queeve. So I thought it was a very nuanced piece from Eamon as well. But I think one great line from it that sticks out for me, and we all have questions about how has this decision come to this? How have they arrived at that? Why are we in 3 counties locked down? Why is everything happening? And one of the things he says is some of our COVID-19 policies seem to be based on the same kind of principle which prompted the apocryphal drunk to search for his keys under a street lamp. Not because that's where he dropped them, but because that was the only place where there was light to see. So I think that does sum up, we all have questions. Why is this being singled out? Why is that being singled out? But the overall impression of reading any of these articles is we're all, as the headline in Eamon's piece says, we're all fumbling like a drunk in the dark.
Yeah. Clean, I got the impression in the Spillane piece and the O'Rourke piece that almost they need to remind themselves how good sport has it at the moment in comparison to a huge number of industries. 200 to 500 is not going to revolutionise anything, and if Neffet think it's slightly risky, then why don't we just listen to that advice? Sweeney makes the point in his piece, Eamon Sweeney, it is disappointing, the staying at 200 and not going to 500, but it's not a tragedy, and it may well be the right decision. Isn't that the key line? It may well be the right decision. Nobody knows for sure it's not, so maybe we should exercise caution here. Now, everybody is raising an eyebrow over the line that GAA fans travelling together and congregating at matches, that they'd be getting together, travelling doesn't correspond with reality, but that's their line and they're sticking to it. And we should point out as well, it seemed that Micheál Martin was unaware until recently that the 200-person limit included players and management and officials, and Eamon Sweeney writes, that added to the impression that the issue hadn't exactly been of paramount importance to those imposing the restrictions. And I get that as well, but it's difficult to criticise it at the same time when, as he says, the Gate Theatre has announced it's remaining closed until 2021. Theatres, concert halls, pubs all remain shut. Sport is not in a bad place in that games are happening. A couple of weeks ago it was the mental health of the players. and now it's, oh, the 300 people who can't come to this match. I mean, you wonder if it's moved to 500, will sport be happy then, or will we saying, can we not get this to 750?
Yeah, there is a little bit of frustration, and I like the picture in the Independent of Colin O'Rourke sitting in the stands, and you can understand it. So you're at a game and you're sitting in a stadium which holds 20,000, and there's 100 people in the stands, and you're looking around. You can see how someone would be saying, surely this isn't the way it has to be. Surely we can do a bit better than this. But the reality is that there's, whether it's the government or the National Public Health Emergency Team, whoever it is, I mean, they're trying to make the right decisions in a huge national crisis, really, you know. So in some ways we want everybody to be treated the same, and then in other ways we're saying no, we don't want to be treated the same. We're saying there's a difference between like a rural pub and Temple Bar, and when you lay it all out and you pick holes and you look at all the discrepancies, okay, you can see the problem. And Eamon Sweeney mentioned something about, you know, it's not safe for 400 people to watch a match in Skibbereen outside, but in a couple of weeks' time they're saying it'll be safe for 800 students to go back to the same school. So we can all see the discrepancy. But thinking about today, I was thinking, well, maybe the point is they're trying to make sure that we don't fall into the trap of thinking life is back to normal, because it's not back to normal, and we all still have to stay vigilant and do the right thing. So if normality just resumes, then maybe we'll all get a bit too slack. You know, maybe we need to keep those measures, and we need to keep reminding ourselves that life hasn't returned to normal. And I loved, like, I was reading Sweeney's piece in the start, I was sort of like, is this going to be another moaning one when we're just giving out about all these little injustices? But he wraps it up really well. As you were saying, that he talks about theatres and the arts, and which they're decimated, absolutely decimated. So the version of me in the arts, so somebody who supports actors, they have nothing to do. At least I now can go to my office, which is the sideline of the pitch. You know, even though there's only 100 people there, there's still something for me to do, rather than absolutely nothing.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think your point is very well made on the behavioural aspect of their thinking. Keeping it at 200 makes it very clear to everybody this is still a very dangerous situation, and you need to monitor your behaviour. And secondly, 80% of people might behave very well. Anecdotally, I can tell you there's definitely 20% of people who aren't behaving well. So they'll go to matches and they won't socially distance. They'll be over talking, you know, I'm not going to say. You're just seeing things. You're seeing things all the time. And I'm sure the government are saying, well, if we loosen it to 500, then we can't trust everyone to behave well. And, you know, but the behavioural point, I think, is dead right. It's a reminder that this is still such a volatile situation. Eamon Sweeney makes some other great points as well, you know, or just in broad terms and less about sport. But he talks about direct provision and how it constitutes a deliberately cruel attack on some of the most vulnerable people in this country, and it's a racist stain on our national character. Yet, even though it's been clear since March that direct provision endangers the lives and the health of those imprisoned within it, no NEFIT official has ever suggested that the system should be closed down for the duration of the COVID-19 crisis, which is a startling and brilliant point. And he goes on to say, last week, 4 clusters in direct provision centres accounted for 47 new cases. NEFIT has been quick to warn about the risks of house parties and to recommend restaurants be forced to close at 10:30, but appears to have no problems with the COVID black spot, which is the direct provision centre. Direct provision is apparently such an essential part of Irish life that it's above criticism, which I think was a point well made as well. And look, there are inconsistencies, you know, I mean, you see the picture of Ballon and his family watching the match, and there's loads of space around them, and you know, there is more room there for sure. And as Eamon Sweeney points out, the government is serious about preventing a resurgence, but it's not entirely serious. If it was, we wouldn't be, as Social Democrats joint leader Roisin Shortall pointed out less than a month ago, the only EU country that allows American visitors to come in at the moment. Why are we so out of line with the rest of Europe? We're clearly engaged in high-risk behaviour. And Sweeney says there's never been any explanation of why this is the case, or why during the original outbreak we were alone among European countries, kept our borders entirely open. So, you know, there are inconsistencies everywhere for sure, but it's just the reality of this situation. It's inevitable. We seem to talk about this most weeks, and you know,
There might be a few more.
It's tiring at this stage. Like, there's people playing sport, there's 200 people in allowed. Like, can we just enjoy that and just, you know, accept it for what it is at the moment?
There's also the point as well, Joe, that should be made quickly, that it's not difficult to understand why the GA has come out and tried to bat for itself a bit more. Like, I mean, I think we all agree that, yeah, a bit of caution is fine as well, but it's easy to understand why the GA are kind of pushing for you know, a little bit more leeway from their purely selfish, and I mean that in a good point of view. And Mick Foley has a piece in the Sunday Times as well, picking up on something that's been a kind of a side of this whole issue that's been dealt with in the Examiner and the Times and other papers during the week. The financial aspect on the boards, there's no money coming in.
Yeah.
They're facing a situation where, as Mick puts it here, some of the chairmen or chair people he's been talking to wondering with genuine concern as county chairman whether their counties will be able to field teams at inter-county level at all. So from a financial point of view, I mean, this is just, you know, it's the worst possible scenario. You have no money coming in, and now you're faced with inter-county season coming up where money will fly out, as we know it does. I mean, even before COVID-19, that was a huge issue. So there are with all of us in every industry, there's huge financial concerns, which, although secondary to health and safety, they are huge concerns.
Yes, it's hard to know if there's enough money in GAA central coffers to bail out the county boards for this year at least.
Hard to know. I mean, Mick puts one of the figures he uses in his piece is television money represents roughly 11 million from Sky and RTE, and the reordered 2020 football championships, 20 odd games on TV is a reasonable result, and may earn around 4 to 5 million. So where does that money go? I mean, the money is ploughed back into the GA, but in what form? It's a shrinking pot, and everybody has their hands out with a bowl. So, you know, it's something I don't think maybe the general public or even the media has looked that far down the line, because there's so much happening at the moment. But where does the money come from? I mean, a few of the questions that Mick puts here, I don't know if he's quoting somebody or I think it might be himself. I mean, what could teams do without? Do they need overnight hotels? Could team buses potentially create a cluster of cases? Can team meetings be reduced and scaled back to Zoom calls? Can players and management feed themselves? What are the possibilities around a 12-month moratorium on expenses? And what low-hanging fruit can be clipped from the backroom teams? I mean, the questions are endless. And once you start cutting, you know, you've health and safety then with players, you've expertise. It's very hard to roll things back once you have a certain level of cleanup. Will know this a lot better than me, a certain level of facilities and backup and everything else. I mean, it's a nightmare for people to even get their heads around that.
Yeah. Cliona, I don't really know to what extent county boards are funded by the local championship matches and the crowds they bring in. Is that the main source of funding, would you suspect, around the country?
Well, that'll be a big source. You know, whatever the county stadium is and championship matches. And it without a doubt, it is a big source of funding. And like you're right, it's 100% a challenge. And there's going to be counties with much smaller budget to have to work with for this upcoming inter-county season. And the other point is true, that when you're used to operating in a certain level with these certain facilities and certain standards and expectation and support teams, and as you mentioned, overnight hotels depending on the game, all this sort of stuff. When you're used to operating at that level because you want to do everything right and be as professional as you can, and then you're faced with the choice, well, what bits do we cut out?
Yeah.
So if the motto is for the last number of years, whatever it takes and inches and we'll do everything we can, and now we're saying, well, if we can only do 50% of that, what 50% are we going to pick? The flip side of that is, though, it does force you to focus on what is actually essential and really important, and that is something that I personally have learned over the COVID period anyway. Like, what exactly, if I boil my role down to the essential elements, what is it? Do I need all the fancy equipment and the fancy pitch or whatever? Is a phone call enough sometimes?
Yeah.
So it forces you to focus on what's important, I think, in terms of preparing teams, because the money isn't there and won't be there.
So that feeling you would have before a performance as a puppeteer, where you know, okay, this sharpens me up and I can use this. If you're about to deep dive, that little bit of adrenaline, you're thinking, I don't want, this is bad.
Want it.
Okay, you need to be as calm as you are going to bed almost.
That's the best way to describe it.
Okay.
I might rob that in future.
Okay, do. So what do you do with all the nerves? You can't be nervous then?
Well, telling yourself you can't be nervous, it's like telling yourself, when you just instruct someone to relax. If I tell myself to be nervous, the very first thing that I'm going to feel is a butterfly in my tummy. So much preparation kind of goes into that. So whether that's a routine, so I know for me, my morning routine, so dives are typically done early enough in the day. I'll get up, there's a stretching routine that I do, and then I go into lung stretches. And then once that's done, I suppose the real preparation starts. Come, let's go. And that's meditation. If I am nervous, I journal. And it sounds cheesy, but it's just about leaving any negative thoughts that you have, behind. Mm-hmm. Writing them down, going, right, if there's anything valid here, I will come back to it later. I cannot bring it underwater. I will not bring it with me underwater. So there's so much around your breathing, your preparation, and of course your headspace. Thoughts use oxygen, so you want to keep them as neutral as possible and, as relaxed as possible.
Okay. So 6 minutes is about your length. I think the right. Female world record is in excess of 9 minutes.
9:02. Yeah.
Okay. How much fuel are you using up? How close to empty are you going when you go down 60 metres? How long does that take?
I'm a particularly slow diver. So a depth dive will always be a shorter time. I do 60 in 2:15, 2:20.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you've loads in the tank, actually.
But you're also then moving a lot more. So you're using a lot
energy.
more oxygen.
Right.
But just going back to that 9:02, the world record by Natalia, I've watched that dive so many times. There's a recording of it.
Right.
She lifts her head after 9:02, at 9:02 minutes, like she's just held her breath for 20 seconds.
Right.
She is extraordinary. It takes nothing out of her. She looks so fresh when she finishes it. It is remarkable.
And would she have a genetic predisposition, be it her VO2 max or lung capacity?
She's Russian. She was a professional swimmer. She, in 2015, she did pass away in a diving accident.
Right.
So she would have, I suppose, common thought is she's possibly one of the best free divers in the world. She started freediving when she was 42, I think,
right.
And set all the female world records over the span of her career.
Right, okay. God, that's stark. I didn't realise she'd passed away.
Yeah, and actually her son, Alexei, he is the male champion. So he holds world records in definitely one, possibly two of the disciplines now.
Mm. So what do you think about, if anything, when you're going down and coming back up?
So the very first thing I do at the start of a dive is, this is cheesy, is remind myself why I love doing this. So the very start of the dive, the first pulls into the water you have to overcome buoyancy, so they take a little bit more effort. So I just remind myself with a bit of a positive affirmation, it's a beautiful day for diving, Claire. Enjoy your dive, off you go. And it always sounds silly saying it, above water, but it's just to set up your mind for the rest of the dive. And you have to remind yourself, so it is uncomfortable. There is elements that are uncomfortable, but you have to just kind of at least set off on the journey in the right headspace.
Yes.
So I do a lot of singing in my work. So very often I'll have some song in my head at the time. And I usually use the rhythm of that to get me down to the 20 meters.
Yeah.
Once I start into free fall, the idea is, I suppose, to keep your mind as blank as possible. In my experience, nature abhors a vacuum. So if I leave it empty, invariably a negative thought will come in. So just positive affirmations. It's nothing too profound.
Right.
Whether some people sing the Just Keep Swimming song, it's anything that'll just give your mind something small to hook onto.
Yeah.
to stop any thoughts coming in, and then keeping the body as relaxed as possible.
And 60 metres down, is it pitch black all around you?
It really depends where you dive. So usually I've done my 60 metres in Dahab in Egypt, in the Blue Hole, and it's incredible. The visibility is about 30 metres.
Wow.
So obviously it's dark and the light changes, but you still get those rays of light coming through. It is incredible.
Wow.
On the way down, I usually have my eyes closed, and then when I turn, I open them. And it's really, really incredible to see how the light changes with depth. Obviously, it gets brighter as you come up near the surface. It's visually, it's really satisfying as well.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station. Off the ball.
I joke about it now. I can count on the number of times you've actually told me you're proud of me.
Oh, it's the truth. My father, it was only when he was dying in Wexford Hospital 19 years ago, and he said to my cousin was there that he was proud of me. That he never said it.
No, are we blaming? We're not blaming you. But we're blaming Grandad.
Can I officially say I'm proud of him? But I'm proud of my daughter.
Thanks, Dad.
Off the ball. Weeknights from 7 and weekends from 1. This is OTB Sports Radio.
Now that the UEFA Champions League has returned, OTB has teamed up with Pepsi Max and Doritos to bring you another brilliant roadshow, but with a difference. Our very own Nathan Murphy will be joined by David Myler.
I just seen Kenny Dalglish out of the corner of my eye.
Chris Sutton, Stilian Petrov, Neil Lennon and Jason McAteer.
You could keep a squad of 20, 22, 23 players happy.
For a very special remote roadshow. It can only be experienced by picking up our special code to view over Zoom, so keep your eyes peeled on how to win on our social channels. Pepsi Max and Doritos, it's back, get ready. See otbsports.com or search OTB Sports in the App Store for more.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.
And a very good morning to you. If you've just joined us, you're very welcome along. Or if you're a podcast subscriber, then you're very welcome along as well. We've been listening to some of yesterday's paper review and also an interview with a free diver. I keep saying that, a free diver. Both of which are available for you on our podcast network. You can get them. Subscribe to the highlights button. Make sure you hit the subscribe button on the OTB Sports app. And away you go. Laughing in the background there is Owen Sheehan. Owen, how are you?
Not too bad, Ger.
Are you a little bit delirious with the lack of sleep?
A little bit, actually. Yeah, but delirious, but not feeling dissatisfied as a result of the delirium. Sometimes you can do a Super Bowl, I find, and you wake up the next morning after 1 or 2 hours and feel, was that really worth it? And you get to halftime and that just really prolongs the pain into the middle of the night. Whereas with a golf tournament, it's like it ratchets up nicely as the time goes by, and you get to a situation at about midnight where you're like, well, I've gone this far, I ain't stopping now.
Most casual golf fans do not know who Colin Morikawa is. Who is Colin Morikawa?
Well, Colin Morikawa is the young PGA champion, 23 years of age, only graduated this year from college. He has won the US PGA at a younger age than Tiger Woods was when he won his first one. Jack Nicklaus and Rory McIlroy were both younger than Morikawa, so since 1946, he is the third youngest guy to win this. He's been well known. He's had more wins on the PGA Tour than he's had missed cuts. So he's arrived on the scene and has been remarkable. He was quite well known by people who know a lot about golf during his college years. Wasn't exactly the player to come out of college, but was certainly a player to come out of his year of college. And we now know at the moment that every single collegiate year in the United States is producing a new unbelievable player. So he won it in remarkable fashion last night. The moment that won it for him was his tee shot on the 16th. And for anybody who hasn't seen it, they should check it out because it is absolutely remarkable. It was a par 4, which was the green was reachable off the tee box. And he took out the driver on that tee box while in the mix for a lead. So this is a field where we had 7 or 8 people in real contention. It was always going to take a moment of magic. His driver carried 274 yards and set himself up for an 8 or 9 foot eagle. And that was essentially the tee shot that won him the tournament. And for me, that is a remarkable way to do it, especially given the conversations we've been having around the sport over the last little while about the beefcake that is Brooks Koepka, about Bryson DeChambeau putting on all that magnificent weight over the last few months. To see this guy, this 23-year-old kid, step up on the 16th hole, show cojones that Troy Deeney would be proud of, and whack that ball 274 yards and notch that eagle. It was just a remarkable way to do it. Had a bit of luck, chipped in on the 14th as well, but he was fully deserving of his win for that 16th tee shot alone. Okay,
he beat Paul Casey into second. Who else played well? Dustin Johnson, who was obviously the overnight leader. Did Dustin Johnson get psyched out by what Brooks Koepka was saying or not? Was it? Did DJ play okay?
He played okay. Like, he went 2 under for his round, but that would have been the joint worst of everybody basically in the top 10 yesterday. So it was a low-scoring day. Colin Morikawa shot the best round of everybody in the mix, everybody in the top 20 yesterday. So Dustin Johnson, it was there for him, and he did let it slip to a point, but there wasn't like a massive bottle job or anything like that. It wasn't a spectacular meltdown or anything. Casey, you thought, could really come into play yesterday as well. And then you had Wolf and Champ, the 2 other young Americans who were in the mix as well, alongside Morikawa. They all have amazing names. All the new young American players. Like, you should see next year's crop. They have the best names. That like, it gets better and better with every passing year. Like, you thought Bryson DeChambeau and Brooks Koepka were good names. Wait till you see next year. But you had Jason Day in the mix. You had Tony Finau, who's yet to win a major. Only had 1 win in his career actually so far. Who were also brilliant last night. Both shot cards of 4 under par. But just Morikawa and that eagle on 16 literally will go down as the moment that won him the championship.
65 and 64 over the course of the weekend for Morikawa. A new star is absolutely born. I mean, he had become a bit of a star with his more wins than cuts missed stats that had been doing the rounds up until recently, but that is an absolutely sensational performance from him. And I woke up this morning, I did not stay up and watch it, and saw, oh look, he had an eagle on 16, must have holed out, but actually it is like it's essentially a tiddler at that stage for an eagle. And obviously rattled it straight in, wins by 2 shots.
Like, imagine, like, just come back to that, the balls you have to have at that tee to actually do it. Like, maybe there's like a comfort being in the midst of like an 8-way charge to the finish line at that point, where it's not going to be somebody who messes up that hands the title to somebody. It was always going to be somebody who took the initiative and actually kind of, I don't know, crack something like that. Like, I mean, it is kind of a ballsy move, but at the same time, there wasn't exactly a massive lake 4 inches to the right of where he did. He would have ended up in the sand had it gone wrong, and he probably would have done all right and possibly got a birdie from that position anyway, because he's so good in every element of his game. But like the trophy presentation as well was possibly the only thing that went wrong for him last night. Like, it's obviously a ludicrously ginormous trophy, and he couldn't quite keep the lid on the tin, which went flying off Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang style.
How did the Irish do?
Well, Rory McIlroy was, I guess, somebody we were half keeping an eye on yesterday to see what sort of a round he would put in. Like, he went 2 under yesterday, so he finished up at 2 under par. I think it was late Friday night actually, when we realised we probably wouldn't have much Irish interest going into the weekend, when Shane Lowry obviously had a bit of a meltdown. He wasn't good yesterday at all. He was 4 over yesterday. He finished in a tie for 66th. But we'll be getting into McIlroy a little bit later on in our pressure rankings. Like, what you kind of expect almost yesterday is that he will put in a significant round on a Sunday when there isn't much to play for. But like DJ, he went 2 under yesterday.
What time did the golf finish up? What time did you crawl into bed?
About 2:15 maybe. I wanted to stay for the trophy. Like, every single moment that passes at that moment, you're like, I may as well stay for the trophy presentation at this point and all that. So yeah, about 2 quarter past.
All right, that's not too bad. Yeah, so we expected to drift off sometime around 9:30 this morning. I will do my best to keep you awake. Shane Hannon, good morning to you. How are you?
Morning, lads. I'm well slept. I didn't do what the hardy Owen Sheehan did and stay up, but watched the first 9 and went to bed. So fair play, Owen. That's some serious going to stay up till that time. That's commitment.
Yeah, or else being really sad. Who knows what else would have been happening on a Sunday evening?
I love the fact that we're already quoting just to add a little bit of pressure to Colin Morikawa's shoulders, the Jack Nicklaus and Tiger Woods quotes that are often rolled out are the facts and figures. As soon as a young player wins a big tournament, it's like, oh, we're going to heap some more pressure on them. I can understand it. I mean, it's extraordinary what he's achieved last night, but I'd imagine he's feeling the pressure. Although, judging by his post-round interviews, he seemed quite confident. He says, I feel pretty comfortable in this position. So he's born to be a winner, I think, Colin Morikawa.
There was a moment after the tee shot where he kind of very carefully and he fist bumps the caddy, and then all of a sudden he's just laughing. He just couldn't help himself from just laughing. It was like this eruption of joy, and seems like so far. I mean, I haven't done any of the background reading, so seems like this is one of the good ones. Seems like this is not part of the Patrick Reed, Bryson DeChambeau, Brooks Koepka school. It seems like, well, we wait and see. I'm sure somebody is currently trawling through his old social media tweets to see what we can dig up, how they can.
Well, you see, he was like, it's his local course as well. I think he went to college in Berkeley, 20 miles away from the course, so he would have played there growing up and knows the course quite well. I mean, Owen mentioned the eagle on 16, that was extraordinary, but on the first two holes, he had really long par putts, so the fact that he held his nerve, they could both easily have been bogeys, but he held his nerve, got pars in those first two, eased into the round, and really came into his own in the back nine, because I think at one point there was 6 players tied for the lead on the back nine. So the fact that he pulled away and won by 2 shots in the end is pretty impressive.
Yeah, Berkeley, pretty impressive slew of people who've come from there in the past. Obviously, he's clever enough as well. What else is going on, Shane?
Yeah, we'll actually start with that news of the PGA Tour win last night. So that final round of 64 for Colin Morikawa, winning him the US PGA Championship, playing in just his second major, as Owen mentioned, finishing up on 13 under, 2 clear of Dustin Johnson and Paul Casey. McIlroy, who we've spoken about, ended up on 2 under, while Shane Lowry finished 3 over. McIlroy's 68 and a 67 for Tiger Woods means both shot their best rounds of the week yesterday to finish 2 and 1 under respectively. So that final round for Shane Lowry, not so good. It was a 74, 3 over par 4 of the tournament, so that was his worst round of the week, unfortunately. Morikawa becomes just the 9th player to win the US PGA on their debut, the first since Keegan Bradley back in 2011. Morikawa said afterwards he always had belief he could win.
But yeah, I've believed in myself since day one, and I've said it. When we sat down, I specifically remember at Travelers, the 4 of us, me, Wolf, Victor, and Justin Suh, and I just told everyone, all 4 of us, and obviously we've all had some pretty good paths. Justin struggling a little bit, but we all believed since day one that we can do this. And, I haven't let up from that. I feel very comfortable in this position, but it was going to take a very, very good round today.
Some soccer news as well. Manchester United will be looking to book their place in the Europa League quarterfinals tonight. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's side take on FC Copenhagen in their quarterfinal in Cologne. Of course, due to the impact of COVID, the ties in the closing stages of that tournament will be single-leg games held behind closed doors at venues across Germany over 2 weeks. Despite the unusual format, the United boss is targeting a place in the final.
We are in a strange period and strange times at the moment, unprecedented, and we've just got to make the most of it. And if we're able to go through to the semis and then to a final, it would mean a lot to the players. We just have to make the best out of a difficult situation.
Elsewhere tonight, Inter Milan play Bayer Leverkusen in their last 8 tie, both of those games kicking off at 8 p.m. this evening. The draw for the first qualifying round of the Europa League next year will take place at 11 a.m. this morning. Meanwhile, Bohemians, Shamrock Rovers and Derry City will all learn their opponents. Meanwhile, Rovers stretched their lead in the Electricity League to 6 points after they beat Derry City by 2-1 yesterday. This evening, Finn Harps host St Pat's. That's in the FAI Cup. Kick-off at Ballybuffet is at 7:45. In the Scottish Premiership yesterday, Celtic drew 1-1 with Kilmarnock, while Rangers beat St Mirren 3-0. So Celtic it is who blinks first in the race to get, of course, their 10th Scottish Premiership title in a row. 2 positive coronavirus cases have been confirmed at Atletico Madrid. Meanwhile, the club's first-team players and staff tested ahead of their journey to Lisbon for this week's Champions League quarter-final. That's against Red Bull Leipzig on Thursday. Atletico say the 2 individuals are now self-isolating, while the rest of the travelling party will be retested. Not clear yet if the 2 individuals are players or members of staff. The Formula 1 yesterday, brilliant strategy from Red Bull and Max Verstappen. as they won the 70th anniversary Grand Prix at Silverstone. Lewis Hamilton was second for Mercedes to extend his championship lead over his teammate Valtteri Bottas, who was third. But the German team struggled in the warm temperatures, Red Bull making the decision to go with the hard tyres early, which paid off for them. Ferrari's Charles Leclerc was outstanding in taking fourth on a one-stop strategy. That result, with fastest lap for Hamilton, means he extends his championship lead over Bottas to 34 points, but Verstappen has slipped ahead of Bottas into second, so he is 30 points behind Hamilton. There's an 8-race card at Ballon Road this evening, lads, where the first race goes to post at 20-5, and I thought I'd finish on the snooker. Anyone who was watching Ronnie O'Sullivan last night will have been keenly interested in his post-match interview. So the quarterfinals get underway at the Crucible in Sheffield this morning from 10 a.m. The first match of the day sees defending champion Joe Trump take on Karen Wilson, his good friend, while 2010 world champion Neil Robertson takes on 3-time world champion Mark Selby. Anthony McGill and Kurt Mafflin start their quarterfinal this afternoon. McGill beating Jamie Clark in a late night deciding frame last night to progress 13-12. But it is Ronnie O'Sullivan everyone's talking about. The 5-time champion came through his second round tie with Ding Junhui yesterday evening by 13 frames to 10. We're going to bring you a clip now. So Ronnie had some interesting comments about the lower ranked players on tour when asked if he's surprised he's still playing to such a high level.
Probably if you asked me then, no, but then when you look at the standard of play, then I'd say yeah, because like I said, even people like me and John and Mark, if you look at the younger players coming through, then they're not that good really, do you know what I mean? And most of them are like, wouldn't even make, they'd probably do well as half decent amateurs, do you know what I'm saying? Well, not even amateurs, I mean, they're so bad that, a lot of them that you see now, you just think, I've probably got to lose an arm and a leg to sort of fall outside the top 50, do you know what I mean? So that's really sort of why we're kind of hovering still around, because of of just how poor it is down that end,
It's not that bad. Well, anyway, thanks, Ronnie.
Thanks, Ronnie. Let's wrap this up in case you say anything interesting. Oh, don't ask another question when you've just decided that you're about to... Come on, ask him another question. Who are you talking about, Ronnie? What do you mean?
Yeah, he's character. I mean, Twitter was like overflowing last night with opinions on Ronnie. He is like Marmite. People love him or hate him. You could say he's disrespectful. You could say he was maybe just having a bit of crack and riling players up. Mind games, who knows? But he's always been a bit like that. Like, it's in his defence, he makes things interesting. I mean, snooker has kind of lost its characters over the years. You had the likes of Alex Higgins and Jimmy White. Ronnie is probably the last of that ilk that people will actually tune in for the post-match interview.
You're still banging the Alex Higgins for Mount Rushmore drum. Shane, thanks very much for being with us this morning. More from Shane across the day on otbsports.com. And you can get his good stuff over on the OTB Sports app. Just search OTB Sports in the App Store at 17 minutes past 8. Is Ronnie O'Sullivan going to feature a little bit later for us on our Gillette Power Rankings, Gillette Pressure Rankings?
Oh, he is indeed. He has firmly put the pressure on a whole cohort of young snooker players. In the best post-match interview of the year. I was going to say one of the best, but it is the best interview of the year. Nothing is coming close to it at this point. Brooks Koepka looks meek when it comes to trash talk when Ronnie O'Sullivan goes in front of the mic.
Let's move on. We're going to talk Champions League. So the fixtures this week: Atalanta against Paris Saint-Germain on Wednesday at 8 o'clock. On Thursday at 8 o'clock, it's RB Leipzig against Atletico Madrid. For now, obviously, Atletico have had a couple of positive COVID tests over the course of the night. It's Barcelona against Bayern on Friday night at 8 o'clock, and it's Manchester City against Lyon on Saturday at 8 o'clock. This is, it's obviously not ideal the way this is all happening, but it's going to be sensational. 4 matches in 4 nights in Lisbon.
Yeah, this is the week. This is like when we saw the whole new era for the Champions League in the middle of coronavirus. This is exactly the week we were looking forward to. The one-off ties is exactly what we want. Like the way the draw has fallen, it's going to be very, very hard to look past Barcelona against Bayern as the tie of the round when there is like an unbelievable pressure on both of these sides to actually progress. That people may say, well, Barcelona, given how they've been all season, it's almost like a free hit for them. But then you watch them on Saturday night and you realise, hold on a minute, there's no such thing as a free hit when you've got Lionel Messi in your team. He doesn't have the same transformative impact potentially with weaker teammates. There's no question about that.
No.
But I mean, he was like Keanu Reeves in The Matrix with his goal the other night. It was absolutely sensational.
Yeah, it was. No free hits for anybody at this stage. Graham Hunter, good morning to you. How are you?
Morning, lads. Grant.
The Keanu Reeves in The Matrix is as good a description as I've heard for Leo Messi's goal. I've decided all my objectivity is gone. I just want Leo Messi to win one more Champions League, and this is it. This is the 15 days in which he has to do it. Come on, Leo.
No chance. Absolutely no chance. You're right about that. It's such an odd time. Clubs around Spain are starting their pre-season now. Barcelona haven't finished their Champions League season, a season where they haven't won anything apart from Leo Messi's Ballon d'Or, something that during Messi's career has only happened to him, I think, once, that he hasn't won a team trophy. And watching Leon dispense with Juventus, which was strange, and thinking about Cristiano Ronaldo trying to defeat the French almost single-handed, or both feet in his head. And you think about his Champions League victories, whatever it's 4 with Real Madrid, 1 with United, a defeated finalist, played in all of them. And you look at Messi and the way that we talked about when he was captain, he had that speech at the Camp Nou about desiring to bring that beautiful trophy back, and it's been too long, and how many times he's talked passionately about wanting to conquer Europe. And you've never had an inkling, I swear at least, that it's about personal. He's talking as captain of Barcelona because it's been 5 years since he won the Champions League. And you think about his 4 medals, he only played in 3 finals. And in the 3 finals, he was devastating. You know, a goal in Wembley, a goal in Rome, and an assist in Berlin. He's one of a handful of players that's won 2 trebles. But you're right, he's short of Champions League final appearances, never mind victories. And as much as your honest description, I've never seen The Matrix, so I can't, go yay or nay on that one. And your enthusiasm is contagious. But he's also playing aside Bayern, who stand to become only the second club after Barcelona to win 2 trebles, because they've wrapped everything up domestically. I think that although I've tipped City to win this, I would understand if people told me out and out Bayern Munich are favourites because of their squad, because of their athletic prowess, physicality. I think that gives them, certainly I think that it will give them the edge over Football Club Barcelona. I'm really pleased that, given that I live and work in Spain, I'm really pleased you enjoyed the Barca-Napoli tie so much. And the first half was extremely interesting. Messi did special things. But I will own up that if Barcelona were to go through, even in these odd circumstances, in a one-off match against Bayern Munich, it would be one of the big surprises of my working life.
I mean, the functionality of this, and look at me reaching for my tropes and stereotypes of this Bayern team at the moment. Like, I can completely see how you make the case that they're exactly what Barcelona don't need this week, that they need something completely different from that. And at the same time, it's reached that point now where we're going to end up with Messi going, Ronaldo ended up winning more Champions Leagues than him. And how did Barcelona screw this up to the point where they couldn't build a team every year that made him semi-finalists as opposed to every year making him quarter-finalists? And I don't know. This is, like, because of the weirdness of this, he's just got to win 2 more games and then he's in the final and then he's going to win it. I know he's going to win it when he makes it to the final.
I genuinely, I think that when we watched, you invited me on your programme regularly when Barcelona were at their absolute peak. And whether you liked them or didn't, or supported other clubs, or maybe they turned over your team in Europe, the fact was that broadly they were admired. They set new standards for a brand of football, which was a little bit, it wasn't alien, but they imposed a style of football that began to inspire and educate all around them, whether it was fans or commentators, or whether it was coaches and other young players, and they were to be copied. They were inspirational. I think that's a fair word. Even at the absolute apogee of that football, their most articulate students, Xavi, for example, but most of them would say, if we're not at our physical best, then we'll be beaten. We play a brand of football whereby, number one, we're not special athletes. Number two, the majority of us are small, some of which still holds true. And we have to be perfect. Otherwise, a decent side, which is more athletic, which is more brawny than us, which is maybe in better tone than us, will beat us. That was at their apogee. I remember being struck by, because whether it comes across or not, you even when you get good quotes, good interviews from leading players or managers, you try and weigh them up and go, okay, those are good words, but do I believe them? And I remember at Euro 2012 getting unusually productive time with Xavi in the midst of a hectic summer, and talking to him, asking him about the 7-0 Bayern defeat. And look, hey ho, look who we're talking about again, Bayern Munich. When Bayern Munich had pumped Barcelona 4-0 in Bavaria and then 3-0 at the Camp Nou. And I asked him about that, and he said the most clear-cut thing. He said, it was a fluke, it was an anomaly. It was the meeting of a team which was athletically and physically in absolutely great shape, and another team which was not, which was done, which was cooked. And he said it doesn't represent what the two teams were like. And within whatever it was, 2 years, they'd beaten Bayern Munich 3-0 at home in that massive game when Messi and Neymar and Suarez were sensational, and they scored 3 goals in the last 15 minutes, and the gap had beautifully closed because they were in physically good condition and they imposed their skills again. And what I'm saying now is I think that I don't expect a 7-0, but I do think that we're at a replica point where Barcelona on form, if you go back to how they finished the season against Alaves 5-0 away from home. Alaves didn't really turn up. But if you look at the Villarreal game post-restart, it was scintillating. It was absolutely beautiful. 45 minutes worth. Well, they took time to warm up. Let's say 39, 40 minutes of the first half against Napoli was really pretty special. And then they tired and Setien made a pig's breakfast of what to do next. He, for as much as when he gets players who obey him, who are... who owe their living to him, he can produce a brand of football and an intelligence of football, which is really attractive. Setien, I don't have any doubts, is a coach with a clear view of football, and when it comes off, it's very attractive. But boy, oh boy, he's lost in handling this squad. They didn't make substitutes early enough, didn't make sufficient substitutes as the team was running out of gas. So you cast ahead based on what we've seen since restart. And even though Busquets will come back, Vidal will come back, and even though there's now an outside chance that Dembele has some impact on the tie, the difference in athleticism and stamina, given that Bayern is packed with exceptional footballers too. Boy, for as much as football is drama, for as much as football will ram your words right back down your throat, I fail to see how Bayern can tie their laces together and fall over in this tie.
Okay, that has my balloon firmly popped this morning. Right.
Sorry.
That's fine. OTB AM live in association with Gillette this morning. Good morning. Start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. Our guest is Graham Hunter. Graham, the other story that's happened over the last 24 hours is a couple of positive tests for Atletico Madrid. Do we know yet if they are first-team regulars, if they're first-team players, if this is going to have an impact on whether or not the game goes ahead? What do you think is likely to happen here?
We don't know for certain because nobody has come out from the club and said, here is our situation, apart from the fact there was a 93-person travelling squad to go to Lisbon. It's been delayed a day because the two tests... even being careful, I think we can deduce the heavy likelihood is that it's playing staff, because the players were prioritised in the testing order, and we know that there are some testing results to come in today from the same process, which are to do with the technical staff and people of a variety of kitmen. So again, I'm going to be a little bit surprised if it doesn't prove to have been playing staff just because they were first in the testing order. I hope I'm wrong. The two people have been isolated at home. Now, it's nothing to do with Atleti, what happens in terms of does the game go ahead at the moment, because UEFA have said that if there are 13 available footballers, a tie will take place. So at the moment, we're not looking at any danger numerically. The danger is to the well-being of within that squad, the well-being of the people in Lisbon who are putting this this mini tournament on. The clearly Leipzig come into this equation too. So there are incognitos. We're used to footballers or coaches getting this and coming through it no problem. It doesn't mean it will always be the case. So I guess our first worry is that whoever the two guys who are infected with this damn virus are, that they stay well and healthy. Beyond that, it does look as if they'll still be, unless there are serious new developments in the tie. By the rules, the tie is going to go ahead. But we are in a state of a little bit of anxiety until we find out the results of the remainder of the tests. That will come during today.
Okay, so we'll keep a watching brief on that one. We should talk about the other big managerial appointment that happened over the weekend. Sarri gets sacked and suddenly people are like, oh, Mauricio Pochettino, come on down, this is your time. And before even he's like buttoning up his coat to go for the interview or check and see if his phone is charged, Andrea Pirlo sweeps in and takes the gig.
Do you know, it's interesting. I don't know whether I've ever introduced you to him or him to you, but I have a great friend, Aurelio Capaldi, in Rai Uno, who was telling me last week that he thought Juventus were playing terribly, that he had good sources within the club who told him very firmly that Agnelli was ultra unimpressed with Sarri in terms of his behaviour, in terms of his manner. And I said, listen, after so long out, Lyon shouldn't be able to put Juventus away. And Aurelio told me, look out, there's a potential problem here. It was ultra narrow in the end. You'd have normally backed, I think, with enough time in hand after Ronaldo's second to get the third and go through. They didn't. At that point, I think the most powerful family in the history of Italian football, the Agnellis, had long decided that if Sarri couldn't take them through, then he was going to be gone. It strikes me that poor Pochettino shouldn't have been taking his elegant Gucci jacket out of the wardrobe, never mind buttoning it up, because Pirlo was clearly on their minds. I have no idea whether he's going to prove to be an adequate coach or not, but the word fit comes in because whether analytically it's the right time for this squad and Pirlo, whether he's got the talent that equates to how elevated his presence on a football pitch, all of that remains to be seen and remains to be proven, even to himself. But Agnelli patently wanted a fit between the guy who was standing on the touchline, the guy who was running the training sessions, in terms of understanding what Juventus is, manner, history, attitude. And Pirlo represents that. And Sarri's odd because he left Chelsea with the same, how can I say it, lads? The same way which people became exasperated with him. Not his playing style, which is still, when it functions, again, a little bit like City. In fact, I wish I'd drawn that comparison earlier. The ability to handle small to medium clubs who can play football that draw oohs and ahs from attracted onlookers. That seems to unite Sarri and City, and the ability to handle the pressure and the very specific, sometimes idiosyncratic demands of the hierarchy clubs in football. Neither City nor Sarri seem to quite have that mastered.
It's interesting, Graham, how the comparisons immediately go to the likes of Pep Guardiola and Zinedine Zidane when Andrea Pirlo gets this job. Like, if you are comparing the situations, it does seem that the conditions are a little bit different, especially to how Pep was brought through at Barcelona, that Pirlo hasn't exactly had the time to bed in, get to know the fabric of the football club through the prism of being a coach or a manager for a prolonged period of time.
Oh, and I think there's something nice in what you said in that having witnessed at pretty close hand Guardiola and Zidane, you would too automatically divide the two of them and say that irrespective of their iconic status as footballers, which I know why you're comparing them to Pirlo, they even initially were extremely different coaches. And to this day, I don't think Zidane, who went, if you remember, as a trainee coach down to Bavaria to ask Pep Guardiola, can I come and watch a few days training at Savenerstrasse, which Pep obviously did because he worships Zidane. The things that divide those two men as coaches, before we talk about Pirlo, there are more of those than unite them. But the thing that unites Pep and Zidane is that they have this hypnotic effect on big players. And they are able to galvanize big footballers who are maybe, I don't know, in a trough, or maybe are a little bit off their best, or need just reorientation, redirection. Pirlo should have that. Pirlo, irrespective of how he played, is widely understood to be extremely intelligent, articulate, okay, a little bit reserved, but what comes out is high quality. His personality off the pitch matches the absolute special, iconic nature of his football on the pitch. You talked about he doesn't have a year coaching at B team level, which Pep Guardiola did and benefited from. Zidane had a little bit of that, but he was also second coach to, or equal second coach with Paul Clement to Ancelotti. So both of them, had more experience. But a key element in what has made Zidane and Guardiola trophy winners, serious trophy winners in their first season, second season, instant effect, is personality. And that isn't enough on its own. But if you don't have it, particularly at a huge demanding club like Juventus, then you're in trouble. So Pirlo will have that unites the three of them. But as you point out, only he can know whether he's already mastered sufficiently the way to convert his playing ideas into daily work, and then that daily work, even with assistant coaches around him, into winning football. I guess we would all hope that he does have it.
Yeah, I mean, you really want to see him be successful, and it's going to be very interesting to see what sort of transfer business they do, and whether or not all of a sudden Cristiano is available or wants to leave because he either gets on or doesn't get on, or who knows what's going to happen, how they can find a role for him. I did want to ask you just about something that Graham Souness said on the show on Friday, talking about how ultimately at some point Gareth Bale is going to wake up and go, what did I do that for? When it comes to the end, when he's looking back and he thinks about his short period of time when he was one of the world's great athletes and had the world at his feet, he decided that his lifestyle and his family life was more important than chasing medals. And when he said it, it made a lot of sense, I thought. What did you make of it?
I was watching, and it's typical, you get good guests, you get good interviews. And I really enjoy Graham's point of view. And to be honest with you, I share a lot of his ideas and his meters for making judgments. I don't think what Graham said will come true with Gareth Bale because he's constructed in a very alien way. I have believed for a long time, and there's no criticism in my voice whatsoever, because he has been an exceptional athlete, and his trophy record and his wealth will amount to him being able to say, I don't care what you all think in 5 minutes and in 5 years and in 15 years. But he's one of these anomalies whereby he thinks he's doing enough. He, without question, wishes he'd been born with the golf ability that he's got in terms of football. I think he's one of these guys who might say eventually, I wish I'd played more. I wish I'd actually, because he patently still enjoys, or he thinks he's got a right to live as he's living now and still be treated as an elite athlete and an elite footballer by Zidane, and he's bewildered. And it may be eventually that he grows up and goes, well, I could have handled that differently. But I don't think he'll ever change from the guy who says it's okay to play golf whenever I want, even though the club don't want me to, and even though I have a poor history with the explosive twitch fibers around my, valuable frame. It doesn't matter that golf is a different kind of sport that might be affecting the way in which my ability to avoid injuries or my ability to be rehabilitated quickly from the type of injuries I get. He doesn't see that anomaly. And I think because he yearns so much to be the level of quality golfer that he is as a footballer, I don't see him repenting. And I just think he's constructed the reverse from Graham Souness. And Sui was like, this is what I want, and it fitted with football, is my view.
We're more likely to see him on the seniors tour than playing for Manchester United or Spurs or Liverpool or Arsenal at some point in the future.
I guess we might, and good luck to him, but I find it odd, and I find it unpalatable is too strong, but I think he's mishandling something that a talent we'd all love to have.
Yeah.
Therefore, I wish I could respect him more because he's a gorgeous footballer, but I think he's doing the wrong thing. I just think that Sui was talking about himself rather than the Gareth that we've all grown to know and be puzzled by.
I think that's the diagnosis. All right. So look, can I get quick fire predictions for Atalanta versus Paris Saint-Germain?
Yeah, as much as Atalanta are attractive, I saw them tired at the end of their season. I think that Paris Saint-Germain, with Mbappe starting to train again, probably win that.
Leipzig, Atletico?
Until the news yesterday, I had no question whatsoever that Atleti would go through there. And I'm going to say, barring it being Oblak and another key player, Koke, barring it being them, if Oblak's fit, Atleti go through.
You've predicted Bayern are going to beat Barcelona and City against Lyon. Did City see anything in the game against Juve where they're like, ooh, that's not us? We don't like that.
I was pretty convinced by what Pep said about watch out for Rudy Garcia's tactics. Look at what the trouble they caused us last season. And I think that City needed to do more to look like the champions I've tipped them to be against Real Madrid. I wanted to see an extra spurt, an extra oomph and a crispness about their play. But I still think that they beat Lyon. I think that the winner, I still think the winner of the tournament comes from what will be the August 19 semi-final between City and Bayern Munich.
Graham, great to have you with us. Enjoy the week. Thanks a million, man.
Cheers, lads.
It's 8:42 here on OTB AM. It's time for the papers.
AM.
Most of the papers today are actually, OTBsports.com, where Sean Boylan's Meath, a dirty team. It's a Sunday paper review, and it's a question we'll come back to in just a moment. Tommy Rooney wading into this debate on Twitter last night. Keith Quinn and Andrew Noonan appear in court over heroin seizure. Phil Mickelson gets Nick Faldo hook, line and sinker with dad joke. That's from the golf of the weekend. And of course, Atletico Madrid have confirmed 2 positive tests ahead of Champions League. We've just heard Graham Hunter speculate that it is on the playing staff. So I'll run you through the rest of the sports pages here very quickly. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer praising Martial for turning into powerhouse. This is the preview of tonight's game against FC Copenhagen in the Europa League. That game is on in Cologne. Inter versus Bayern is on in Dusseldorf. Inter versus Bayer Leverkusen is on in Dusseldorf. Tomorrow it's Shakhtar Donetsk and Basel and Wolves and Sevilla, and then we kick into Champions League action as well. So that is that. There's a lot of stuff from the press conference yesterday that Solskjaer gave, which is talking about the back page of the Mail launching pad. Europa win will kickstart more success. And then there is all the speculation about the end of era for David De Gea because he refused to back him. Is this the last stop? It's de as in De Gea, because Solskjaer said we have 3 keepers, including Henderson, and I can't keep them all. So there it is, Man United versus Copenhagen. I can't keep all 3 keepers. Excess baggage. Picture of David De Gea in a mask coming off the plane yesterday. Face off, tab of the morning to you, because didn't face off happen on a plane? Wasn't a lot of face off actually? Am I getting this wrong? Am I mixing up Con Air and face off phone?
You might be. It's one pretty average 1980s action film versus another. They all kind of blend into one for me.
It's the 1990s zone. They're both in the 1990s.
It's 1980s as far as I'm concerned. But wow, 97.
Yeah,
oh my God, that's late 90s.
It's not even close. Not even close.
Wow.
Oh, sorry. What did you say? Mediocre.
Yeah.
All-time classics. Both of them all-time classics.
I mean, anything with Nicolas Cage automatically is can't go down as an all-time classic as far as I'm concerned. Yeah.
Oh,
like,
I'm finished. You can take over.
Nicolas Cage is
I'm on strike.
Is an immediate lead balloon for me.
What?
Like, I mean, he's become a parody.
You got no class. That's all I'm going to say about this. You got no class. I'm going to inflict for homework. We're going to start watching some Nick Cage movies, and we're going to give player ratings on them over the next couple of weeks. And you are going to change your tune.
I'm not sure I will, to be quite honest with you.
Yes, you will. You can't. No way.
I'll give you this. Maybe 97 is still when Nicolas Cage is a passable Hollywood presence. But
my God, this is. I had no idea that you were just so wrong about so many things. How can I trust your opinion on anything now, Owen? How can I trust your opinion on anything?
Nicolas Cage is a meme first, an actor second.
The Examiner this morning, masking kit. They've got a good story we'll get to in a moment. Could mask wearing help increase GA attendance cap? And then the UK papers are all fairly similar. Stokes misses series to see ill father, and it's pictures from Lewis Hamilton happy after Verstappen victory. Solskjaer refuses to give De Gea's backing is the back page story on the Irish Independent, and there's a picture too of Aidan O'Shea celebrating with his brother Conor after Bravy's narrow win over Castlebar Mitchells yesterday in the Mayo Senior Football Championship clash, which keeps their hopes alive. So that is essentially what the leads are in most of the papers today. And where are we starting?
We may as well start with that story you mentioned there in the Irish Examiner, John Fogarty in conversation with Mary Horgan. And the idea of masks has been brought up. If you want to actually try and bring the numbers forward, bring the numbers up at GEA grounds, would mask wearing make that a more possible eventuality? And she certainly is suggesting that might be the case. So John Fogarty asks if she was surprised that players, management and games officials were all included in the 200 people at the attendance cap. And she says, I was surprised because you would be presuming most of them would be on the pitch and the backroom staff on the sideline. I would hope that given it's an outdoor sport, and I presume everybody will end up wearing masks and use all the hygiene facilities, that might help putting a strong case forward to expand the number of spectators to 500. So not saying it in black and white terms, but certainly strongly suggesting this morning that to get to 500, everybody needs to be wearing masks at stadiums, which makes sense.
It's really interesting that this conversation is still happening at the moment, and obviously it needs to happen, and the scientists need to be brought to the fore to say this is what's going to happen, this is why it's happening, and this is why it can or can't happen, and that's the decision-making process. While at the same time, 3 counties have had their ability to have any games completely wiped out. And I wonder, is there a possibility that we tilt back into a situation or a scenario where those 3 counties become 10 counties? And what impact that might have on a potential inter-county season down the line as well. So if all these debates ultimately end up being completely moot because we reach a point where club championships continue and they're over by the end of August, early September, and nothing happens after that because we're in a scenario where teams are suddenly not allowed to play matches. It just, these parallel conversations need to happen, but you really hope that last week's lockdown, gets a grip on the situation, and that's the last time that we see any of these local lockdowns, or that the science emerges and says, actually, you didn't need to do that. It had no impact on community transmission. What you needed to do was get in there to the meat factories and close them down and make sure that the working conditions were improved in the meat factories.
But the unfortunate thing now is that the goalposts have shifted a little bit, where a week ago we were saying, how can we get more and more supporters to watch these games happen? Whereas now it feels after Friday afternoon, we're having a conversation about how do we ensure that these games happen. The spectators thing, I feel, is going to fade into the background. It potentially has already faded to the background, because we now know that if there are localized lockdowns, the GAA sport at large will probably not happen. It isn't the same as the Premier League, where it has professional athletes.
They haven't given the go-ahead. So the phraseology, the official phraseology from the department guidelines were suitably vague. Elite sport can continue, inter-county training can continue, was the exact wording of it. You would say that you could make an argument, given that they are part of the government grant scheme, that they're considered elite, and so therefore inter-county sport will be able to continue. Say, for example, this lockdown happened, these 3 counties were in lockdown and the Leinster Championship was going ahead. there would be a strong argument that those games could go ahead behind closed doors if they were involved in games.
Like my issue with that would be the elite sports people, the inter-county footballers or hurlers would be able to go and play a match on a Friday, but if their county's in lockdown, they won't be able to go to work on the Friday morning.
You can go to work.
The lockdown restrictions won't allow them to do certain things within their own county.
Yeah.
Sorry, go to work, of course. Sorry, that is one of the things that you're allowed to do. But certain aspects of your life, your day-to-day life, maybe some aspects of your work will be affected by this. I just find it interesting that you will be able to go and actually play sport while also operating in your own job, being a regular part of the community. And that is the difference here between the professional and the non-professional. And I know that it is down as elite, which will allow inter-county games and training to go ahead. I would still have concerns about whether or not the championship is going to happen this year, basically.
So the exact wording was, no sporting events or matches should take place with the following exemptions. Non-contact training outdoors in a maximum group of 15 people may continue. Professional and elite sports and horse racing may continue behind closed doors. So that means rugby, that means League of Ireland, and elite sports, you would assume, means inter-county. I mean, it's not written down, but it does say inter-county training, max 15 people, and fixtures may continue behind closed doors. So they've got this wording ready for a time down the line when a county goes into lockdown. That county is due to play a match that weekend. Certainly from talking to people who are in those counties, they don't feel like they have been in any way more lax than people in other counties. There is a lot of anger towards the locus points of the outbreaks that is stopping some small businesses from opening, some people from going about their day-to-day lives. It's made more manifest by not being able to continue to open. If you're a restaurant, you can only do takeaway or delivery stuff, whereas actually last week you were able to open and then all of a sudden you can't. And amateur sport is locked down, so no local football, no local GA, no local rugby. There seems to be some early issues with understanding exactly what rules are going to have an impact and what rules aren't going to have an impact. And maybe these three counties end up being test cases, and in 2 weeks' time evidence emerges and they change the guidelines. Just haven't seen a lot of guidelines being changed recently or loosened up. So I think that the framework for an inter-county season to continue is there. It's whether or not counties will then feel like it's the right thing for us to do, given that there is a lockdown, to send our team in a bus from Kildare to Croke Park. And what if Dublin ends up being the county that gets locked down? Do counties feel comfortable sending their teams to Croke Park to play, or do you move the games then out of Croke Park to Thurles or Cork, or what happens?
That's going to be one of the significant questions. The reality is, of course, these localised lockdowns are test cases. Surely in any society, the first thing that you do should be something that you learn from. And that's not to say that this is some sort of weird social experiment or anything like that. It's just the way things work. And we will definitely have to find a way where we can live with this thing. The point of actually imposing lockdowns in order to crush coronavirus is never going to happen. It is about how do we figure out a way that we can actually operate and live our lives in a way while this thing also exists out there. And if there is a happy medium where it is just inter-county players, or maybe you can get it down to club level within the GAA, where those games can at least happen and there isn't a spike in community transmission, then we should absolutely be proceeding with that, or at least we should be looking into how that works. And if the first step in that is ensuring that there's no amateur games at the start, and then perhaps bringing in some amateur games during a localised lockdown, maybe that's the way through this. There's going to have to be some little element of risk, as we've always been told, if we want to make steps forward.
Okay, let's move on. What's next?
Next up in the papers this morning, let's go to the FAI. This is a story that's been covered extensively over the last little while. I suppose the last time we were on air was Friday morning. We had Niall Quinn on the show before the FAI council meeting at the Red Cow Hotel that night. And the whole idea of unity was something that was peddled quite a bit throughout last week. And it flew in the face of what we were actually seeing from the top rank of the FAI, where there was anything but unity. We had renegade directors issuing a statement last week, but everybody seemed to fall in line on Friday night. It seemed like you had 11 of the 12 directors showing up, and when asked from the floor to raise their hands if they considered the board to be unified, all 11 of those did so. So a united front was definitely shown on Friday night. What actually went on in the throughout that board meeting, we obviously, throughout the council meeting, we won't know for sure, considering some compromises may have had to be made. Like, you listen to some of the quotes, like Jerry McInerney was quite interesting. He said that the issue's been put to bed, apologies have been made, and as far as we are concerned, the matter is closed, which is quite a departure from the statement on which he was a signatory 48 hours before that moment. So it must have been quite a progressive meeting. Like, you've had a few dissenting voices over the last few days as well. You had Mick Wallace coming out saying what Roy Barrett argued was that this is a point the government insisted on. I find that a bit rich, given the government's struggle to run a piss-up-in-it brewery and now they're experts in how a football organisation should run. He says this is the same government that bailed out useless, broke banks for billions and are prepared to let the FAI go insolvent for a couple of million. They're going to lose $1 billion on the Children's Hospital. The idea they'd let the FAI go insolvent because we wouldn't agree to 6/6, I don't think they'd allow it to go insolvent. So there's probably plenty more to be said about this. It is just interesting that they've managed to get people all on the same page very, very quickly last week.
Yeah, and they still need 2/3 of the majority to make it pass at the EGM, which is going to happen at the end of this month. There is potential for some legal shenanigans to happen in the meantime, with a fairly suddenly high-profile executive council member threatening legal action if an AGM doesn't happen before that. So that story that we all love, Irish sports administration wrangling with itself like a cat ranch, is something that we all have a couple of weeks to look forward to. So I certainly am not going to tune out from that, because I think there is still some pretty interesting stuff to happen over the next couple of weeks. Where are we going last?
Has it gone up a notch in the sex appeal?
Well, I mean, I thought it was all. I thought, like, it is literally the future of the biggest sport on the island at stake. Like, it will collapse in on itself. There will be a black hole for Irish football for a couple of decades, potentially, if we're not careful here. And like the green shoots are really evident. You can see the young players starting to come through, and they're coming through with a style of play and a self-confidence on the ball that, in numbers, that would give you really hope that we might actually be about to produce a period of Ireland being decent again at international level at senior team. You know, that didn't come from nothing, but it will absolutely all be for nothing if the FAI ends up going bust, because and also actually the organisation will massively benefit from having independent voices at board level who are saying, have you thought about this? Well, you know, in my experience, I've learned these things. Perhaps some of that experience is actually going to be useful to this organisation. Some of it won't be, but the bits that are, take them. Like, that's how a good board should function.
Do we know who, where the votes go actually come the voting this year? Like, do we know who is going to vote against the MOU, I wonder, later this year? Because if it doesn't pass, there will obviously be questions to be asked of those people who showed up and said, actually, no, we're willing to see this organisation go under. Like that would be the thing I'd be interested in.
Well, I think it's a show of hands as opposed to anonymous. I'm not sure we can find that out, but certainly what actually happens on the day itself, you will know. People will stand up and say, I'm making the case for or against.
Yeah. So like there will be like an element of public shame attached to it, because like whether you argue for or against it, I still think that the specific sticking points are quite specific and certainly not worth the price. The stakes on the line here, the very existence of the organisation. So it's like this month. I mean, if you are hooked onto the FAI soap opera, then there's plenty more coming your way later on this month. One last story this morning, just a quick one. Draymond Green. Like, this is how you do analysis. If you've got brought in as a player who wasn't part of a team involved, so you know a broadcaster brings you back, you've got to have a game, you've got to have an angle, and Draymond Green...
Explain who he is.
Busy bidding. He is the Golden State Warriors shithouse. The guy who will make your life a misery, an outstanding defensive player. The Golden State Warriors, of course, Golden State aren't in this year's playoffs, so he was back on TNT last week doing a bit of analysis, watching Phoenix Suns play, watching Devin Booker, one of the best young players in the league, play. and he praised him for his play and said, but get my man out of Phoenix. It's not good for him. It's not good for his career. They got to get Book out of Phoenix. I need my man to go somewhere where he can play great basketball all the time and win, because he's that type of player. And now a few alarm bells started ringing in the TNT production box, and Ernie Johnson, the presenter, had to press him on this. And he asked him if he thought his comments involved tampering, which of course he can't do in the NBA. And Green responded, maybe, not really veiling his attempt to lure Booker to Golden State whatsoever. And he ended up getting himself a 50k fine.
50 grand.
I wonder what his fee was to show up to
not
TNT.
50 grand, surely.
Probably not 50 grand, but he's got himself that fine. Now, in fairness, if it does help the team get Devin Booker, then it will be worthwhile. For anybody who wants to see him, he'll be playing at 7:30 Irish time tonight. The Phoenix Suns are up against the Oklahoma City Thunder in an early game, and he is absolutely worth every minute you can spend watching him. He scored 70 points against Celtics in a game a few years ago. He's been brilliant since the restart. Scored a buzzer beater in a game a few days ago, and the team have gone 5-0 since the restart as well. So the Suns have been on form and look like they might be in with a shout of getting a playoff spot. So yeah, I guess Draymond Green, a bit of a loser, but if they get Booker, he'll be a massive winner.
Maybe TNT step in and pay it. And actually, now that I think about it, maybe he is getting 50 grand. It's like one of the most watched things in the world at the moment, because there's nothing else on in America, and so therefore they probably can throw a lot of cash at people. And I presume, you know, his level of superstardom is big enough that he'd be like, I'm getting out of bed for 100 grand here, folks. Like it or lump it. Are we at that level?
Well, possibly, probably for maybe a more prolonged attachment to TNT as well. Like he is a very divisive character, but like he's somebody you would certainly listen to. Like I wouldn't be surprised if that was the fee, but he'll have to give it all back if that is what he's getting. So like as soon as I saw this, I didn't see this happen live. I did think to myself, I need to see more of Draymond on CoCom or on analysis here, and that's why you pay him the big bucks.
It worked out. OTB AM is live in association with Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. Here's a quick look at what's on the OTB Sports app for you right now, which you can download and you can use if you already have downloaded it to get our feed, which is all the stories that you select from all the various sports that you're interested in. You get to personalise that. We have our full 24-hour radio station, OTB Sports Radio, right there, which has all of our live shows and all of our best archive material live in a continuous stream. So if you're at a loose end even, and you want some top quality sports audio, and there's no podcasts that you are currently tuned into that have dropped just recently, then click on the radio and we will curate our best stuff for you. All our video output is right there, but you know that you never run out of our podcasts, right? Because we have about 40 of them, and the best place to listen to those is actually on the OTB Sports app. Just hit subscribe and away you go. If you want to get in touch with us this morning, 087 9180 180 is the number. We're going to take a quick break, but plenty to come over the next hour. Joe Molloy is going to join us to talk about the birth of a new phenom in golf. Overnight, we've got Deal or No Deal with Phil Egan, and up next, our Gillette Pressure Rankings. We're going to be back after these.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
The OTB Brief. Everything you need to know about sport every morning. Need to get on top of the day's sports news? Well, the OTB Brief is the only sports update you'll need every morning. With all the breaking stories, post-match reaction.
I'm doing my bit to help him, but he's got to do it.
And the best bits from off the ball, all in a 10-minute podcast.
The bulking up, maybe it makes him a bit more stable, but look, I saw it on the range a year ago.
The OTB Brief, online every morning from 7 a.m. on otbsports.com or the OTB Sports app.
I didn't attend the meeting. I was nearby and kept informed, but I think it was a good day for football. Do you know, because there's been no real football around and the lockdown period has caused what it caused, COVID-19, I think the tension built between very concerned council members and the new people, say, within the Association Independence, and it was growing and festering. But yesterday helped an awful lot and goes a long way to maybe bringing harmony and unity into the game, which is what the game needs. And I think one of the things that came out of it, certainly from our side of the house, would be I suppose the work that the council does, and that the concerns that they have are genuine, that they want to carry on doing that work in the best possible way and help the association. And I think that was the good thing about it. There was a lot of concerns from their sides which got discussed, and I think by the end of the meeting, people were in a much better place. But it's the start of perhaps a 3-week communication play now, so that the rest of the constituents who will vote whether this MOU is accepted or not get to find out these things as well. And if it goes as well as last night goes, and that momentum keeps going.
Positive day anyway.
Yeah, I think it'll be good
to get the money in for the financial situation, get it sorted.
OTB Sports in your pocket. Listen to OTB Sports Radio 24/7.
Until that habit is broken, do you not realise how crazy those things were?
Watch your favourite OTB videos.
The benefit of being suspended, me and Scoresy were out every night, probably night before the game.
Read all the latest sports news and opinions, all in one place, the OTB Sports app. Listen, watch, read. Wherever you are, we're always with you. The OTB Sports app, available to download now from your app store.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.
You'll have heard Noel Quinn in the ad break there from Virgin Media Sports Champions League coverage on Saturday night. Virgin Media TV customers can enjoy a festival of football with every game live across Virgin Media Television and Virgin Media Sport on broadband, TV, phone and mobile. Check out virginmedia.ie for amazing broadband and entertainment bundles. All right, what are we at? 5 minutes past 9 here this morning. It's time for us to get into our Gillette Pressure Rankings.
For me, it was a self-imposed pressure.
Was I under pressure? No.
Yeah, they're under pressure. Everyone's under pressure.
OTB AM's Pressure Rankings with Gillette.
And the big pressure.
Right, take us away, Owen.
At number 5 in our pressure rankings this morning, we're starting with Meath sympathisers. Those people who have made excuses for Meath football in the past for all their thuggery and their brutish force. They are now under pressure to hold up their end of the bargain and basically argue that Meath weren't all that bad. This comes on the back of the Sean documentary released last Thursday. Could of course only be Sean Boylan. And the pot was stirred a little bit more by Tommy Conlon yesterday in the Sunday Independent. There was a good discussion about it in the paper review yesterday as well, about how the documentary fails to dig really into the idea that this team were more brutal than any other of that era, perhaps more brutal than any team we've seen in the recent history of Gaelic football. Now, I'm not sure if I'd go along with that point of view. First of all, the idea that a manager is intrinsically linked with the identity of a team. That can be true, but I wonder if this is one of these weird moments where this just isn't true, where the brute force of Meath at that point actually wasn't the part of the Boylan psyche.
It was independent. They just took it on themselves to go out and batter and punch and kick and bite and... I mean, just completely out of nowhere.
Is there a chance that it was a player-led thing?
I mean, there is. Look, if you think back famously, the players, right? The players had to go and meet Sean Boylan and tell him to put his shyness in his back pocket. That's what they did, right? So, and if you look at the men that we're talking about here, it's Colm O'Rourke and Joe Castles and Liam Hayes and Mick Lyons, and ultimately there's a bunch more who kind of come along in that same vein, Martin O'Connell and Robbie O'Malley and Liam Harnan and McDermott eventually. Like, I'm not sure any of them actually needed too much inspiration to learn how to look after themselves, to use their elbows, just to like create a little bit of space for themselves. There is a possibility. Having said that, at some point, and Tommy Conlon made the point in his piece that, you know, a manager can rile them up with beautiful words. He can also calm them down to the point where you don't actually need to stand on someone's head to win the match on multiple occasions. You don't need to go after Canavan's ankles. You don't need to take out the best player in the opposition. But maybe you did. Maybe because the rules of the game were not enforced, because referees had absolutely no support, because there was no CCCC to look back at video evidence, because there was no video evidence. Like, you got away with stuff where a broken jaw once every couple of years or a broken nose once every 6 months was the price of doing business.
And also, a layer on top of that as well, which we can't forget, is that you mentioned the likes of Canavan there, and that incident was mentioned in Conlon's article as well yesterday, and also Dooher getting a bit of harsh treatment. Like Canavan Dooher would have been part of one of the more brutish teams we've seen this century. Then, like I can't imagine that Tyrone were any shrinking violets going up against that Meath team. Mayo certainly weren't any shrinking violets going up against them in the '96 All Ireland, to the point where you could make a case that, like, we don't know who even started that brawl on that day. Sure, the outcome favoured Meath in the end, but we don't know who started it. The Cork team, that Meath team would have tried to rough up a bit, would have roughed up pretty much any other team in the country at that point. This was an era where the hard man was at his zenith. And it is down to a number of factors that you mentioned there. Not very much protection from the officials whatsoever. But also because, I mean, there was just a physicality in the game there that you could wield and would be rewarded greatly.
I think fundamentally that's a cultural acceptance of violence. And we had it in Irish society where it was fine to expect people to go to the pub and have a fight after the pub. And every small town in Ireland outside the Chippers had that culture. And they still had it when we were starting to go out, that you would kind of expect that there would be a fight outside the Chippers at some point if you sat there long enough. But I definitely think, and again, Tommy Conlon made the point, the game's been cleaned up. I think the game's been cleaned up because there has been proper discipline, and it's not finished. Like, the game is still not a game where your best players will be allowed to play up against an opponent on the basis of their relative skill and strength. There is still a sense that, like, you're trying to do lads off the ball, and it happens less and less. And probably because people feel a little bit less inclined. But I mean, look, it's going to be interesting now over the next couple of months as we see so many more club games, how often this actually happens and how often it gets brought to national attention. But I do think that Meath team, their ignorance, as Tommy Rooney would use it, their ignorance was a positive thing, he thinks. I think that they would have achieved greatness even if they hadn't been thugs. And like, there was a thuggishness frequently to their behaviour, which is always going to, that's part of the DNA of that team, and you can't ignore it. Like, as you say, loads of other teams were thugs at that time. I would absolutely not include the Tyrone team of the Naughties in that, by the way, whatsoever. I think that is revisionism at an extreme scale from you, which speaks to some deeper, hidden, repressed hatred of that team. But not to digress too much.
Well, have you seen that? Like, John McEntee would probably beg to differ, I suspect.
Anyway, taking
a knee in the face when you're lying down is probably as bad as anything that Meath team would have done. But anyway,
the era is thuggish, right? And they were the best team of the era. You can't divorce these things, can you?
No, you can't. There was a essential hallmark to what this Meath team was. And they were the best at doing it. I still feel in a certain way that they were probably more innovative in these situations than other teams. That
they were the best thugs.
They were the best thugs. Yeah, they were definitely smarter. They were definitely luckier in the violent situations as well, like the '96 brawl. Like, that was like, if it goes the other way and Meath's best player gets sent off and somebody who's not Mayo's best player gets sent off, Mayo probably win that All Ireland, and then all of a sudden we're like, that brawl that Mayo started and how well that turned out for them.
Yeah.
Like, just one last thing on this, like, the winners usually write history, except for in GAA, it seems, where the winners are often tarred with this thing of, God, they did it in a very dirty way. Remember when Dublin pulled down all those Mayo lads before the All Ireland in 2017? Remember how hard a man Tommy Walsh was when he was kneeing people into the back when he was going up for high balls. It does seem that the winners always come with this caveat of, well, geez, they were bullies and then they were brutal on the pitch.
Irish begrudgery is a nice little tasty little element in all of this too. So, it's the perfect Irish stew of what a great team, but what a shower of thugs they were. It's who we are as a people. What's number 4?
Yeah. Number 4 under pressure this week is France Football Magazine. So the pressure on France Football Magazine must be incredible now, because calling off the Ballon d'Or was one of the more stupid decisions we've seen in sport during this entire pandemic. It was very like Ligue 1 getting ahead of themselves and calling off their entire league. Turns out France in general have completely bottled this entire year. So France Football Magazine, who've organised the Ballon d'Or, of course, are going to have Robert Lewandowski banging down their door this morning to bring back the award, because he is currently the unanimous pick for this award. He scored 13 goals in 7 Champions League appearances this term, 4 behind Ronaldo's haul in one season, his record haul in one season, which is 17. There's a chance he might actually get that despite not having second leg games. He's already trumped his scoring feats this season, 53 goals across all competitions. He scored goals in 82% of the matches he's played in. And out of the 7 goals that they scored against Chelsea across both legs, Robert Lewandowski scored or assisted in all of those goals. He is the unanimous pick for the Ballon d'Or, but it doesn't exist. Bring it back, France football, is what I'm saying.
He's 32 this month as well, absolutely peaking at this point. And you would feel he's going to be able to do this for another couple of seasons at this point, because his game hasn't been based on being the fastest player on the pitch at any point over the course of this. I really hope that they get beaten this weekend. I've already said that I'm fully on the Leo Messi needs another Champions League train, and I really hope it's this time, because if it's ever going to happen, it's these 3 shortened, I can absolutely see him putting in 3 brilliant performances over the next while. But Graham Hunter made a brilliant case earlier on, if you missed it, that actually what's going to happen here is there is a buzzsaw that they're running into, and that buzzsaw is a Lewandowski-inspired Bayern Munich. So I think you're 100% correct. Another premature capitulation from the French. What's going on here?
Terrible. Who would have thought it from the French to be able to let down the football community so badly? Right, let's move on to number 3, which is snooker's next generation. So we heard the clip earlier on that snooker's generation are under a bit of pressure to get the finger out and get good at snooker. That's all you got to do. Just become good at snooker.
Some people won't have seen this. So what happened here?
Ronnie O'Sullivan said that he would need to lose an arm and a leg for him to drop out of the top 50 in the world for snooker. He says that the next generation are rubbish, and that is the reason why players like him have been able to hang around for so long. He's into the quarterfinals of the World Snooker Championships and was asked by the BBC that very question: what is the longevity in your career down to? And he basically said, everybody who's come through in snooker recently, it's shite. And you'd wonder, is he wrong? Certainly the profile of the game isn't what it once used to be. We certainly look out for players like Ronnie O'Sullivan more than we do for any young player. But if you're one of the younger generation, and when I say younger generation, I mean anybody under the age of 30, 35, playing snooker, listening to this, you're like, Jesus, let me actually get my ass in gear here and prove to you that, no, even if you have all the limbs of your body attached to you, I will be able to beat you in snooker. Somebody needs to come and give Ronnie O'Sullivan a good beating, one of these younger players. Potentially it might never happen. Potentially we won't see that happen over the next few months.
For anybody who missed the interview, it's worth digging out. Eurosport have put it up on their official Twitter channel, so you can see it. But at the end of that little short outburst, it was less than 50 seconds. The interview goes, well, they're not that bad, but just in case you say anything else, away we go. I'm like, come on. He's obviously on the verge of unleashing here. Name names, crack necks, cash checks. Let's see it, Ronnie. This is our Gillette Pressure Rankings. 5 is Meath sympathisers, 4 is France Football Magazine, 3 is Snooker's Next Generation. What's number 2, Owen?
I'm going for Manchester City here. You can replace this with any of the big 3 or 4 teams left in the Champions League if you want. But we've been here before. We know that when you talk the talk of taking a selfie in front of the Sky News story that your European ban has been lifted, you've got to walk the walk by way of actually winning the European competition. Now, of course, they were never going to be banned from this season's competition, but it will still be one of these Twitter moments on at the weekend. It's a Saturday they're playing. It will be one of these Twitter moments where everybody will start sharing the picture of Pep and his mates in that selfie if they get knocked out of the Champions League. They immediately put the pressure on their shoulders where they have to win a Champions League in the next 3 seasons, and they have a phenomenal chance this year, not least because Bayern Munich and Barcelona have been drawn against each other. I know Graham says that Barcelona aren't much of a challenge to anybody, but it is still Lionel Messi. So either Messi or potentially the strongest team in the tournament are going to be taken out, and Manchester City don't need to do the work themselves on Friday night. It is an amazing opportunity for Pep Guardiola. They looked really good on Friday night, although they got very fortuitous 2 big errors from Raphael Varane. This is the opportunity, but it is also the high-pressure scenario for them.
It's funny, last week I was going to make the case that why is nobody saying that everybody should be buying Varane? He's a perfect defender. It's getting to that point of his life where he's actually going to be superb, and he'd be brilliant in that. Anyway, I'm glad I never actually made that point publicly. Number 1 on your pressure rankings.
Brooks Koepka is number 1 on our pressure rankings this morning. I love Brooks Koepka. Everybody knows I love Brooks Koepka. But, you know, when you play with fire, you're going to get burnt eventually. So on Saturday night, for anybody who missed this, Koepka was asked how he felt about starting the final round of the PGA Championship, chasing his good old buddy, Dustin Johnson. So this is a year after Johnson nearly ran him down at Bethpage, a two-time defending champion of the event and a four-time major winner, of course. Koepka decided it was time to show Johnson, what it's all about, aka how many majors I've got. And he says, I like my chances. When I've been in this position before, I've capitalised. I don't know. He's only won one major. Koepka proceeded to shoot a 4 over par round of 74 yesterday. It's well written on the ESPN website where he beat exactly one player, Jim Herman, out of the 78 he was competing against. So to say that this blew up in his face, to say that the pressure got to him is a bit of an understatement. Afterwards, he said, every time I hit it in the rough today, I probably got the worst lie I've had all week. Hey, it wasn't meant to be. 3 in a row. You're not really supposed to do 2 in a row looking at history, but that's all right. Got 2 more majors the rest of the season, and we'll figure it out from here.
There was a brilliant graphic at the start of coverage where he was going to become the youngest player to win 5 majors. And one of the commenters was like, well, I wouldn't mind winning any majors. And I was like, well, actually, this is a good point because it means that you've had this incredible burst at the start of your career, and he would have been on course to be one of the all-time, he's still on course to be one of the all-time greats if he continues to win majors at the pace at which he's won majors. But the youngsters coming through, it turns out, are absolutely sensational. Is Rory McIlroy as relevant as a golfer now as he is actually as a businessman and as a leader in what, sports athletes activism should be? Should he not be on your pressure rankings?
It's a good point. Like, Rory McIlroy comes into the story just by dint of the fact that he defended Dustin Johnson. Like he said, it's hard to knock a guy who's got 21 wins on the PGA Tour, which is 3 times what Brooks Koepka has. So Rory McIlroy turned into the guy who's like backing up Dustin Johnson, rather than turning into the guy who's actually going to challenge Brooks Koepka and challenge the people who were on 10 under par going into the back 9 on a Sunday afternoon. Like, it's been a terrible resumption after the lockdown for Rory McIlroy. What we forget, though, is that he went into lockdown as world number 1. He surely has it in him to get into contention in the Sunday of Major sometime soon. So I'm not buying that just yet, that he is just an activist.
Fair enough. We're going to talk with Joe Molloy about the golf in some detail in just a moment. The pressure rankings today, the Gillette Pressure Rankings, we do them every Monday here. You can get involved. 0879 180 180 is the number to WhatsApp your ideas to, and we have a prize to give away. We give the prize away on tomorrow's show for people who've been suggesting stuff for us. There is some breaking news. Jadon Sancho has boarded the plane to Switzerland with Dortmund for their training camp. Should Ed Woodward be number 1 on the pressure rankings? We're going to come back to this during Deal or No Deal with Phil in just a couple of minutes' time. But first, golf next with Joe Molloy. Let's hear from Kieran McGee, though, who joined Ellen Keane on Sunday's OTB. Have a look.
What have you got coming up? Have you got any more competitions coming up?
So I do, but I don't know if the start list has been released.
Oh.
So I don't know if I can even tell you. I do have some races planned and some really exciting races to tell you the truth. I'm really excited to run them. I've got another few 800s, 1500s planned. There's a 1K coming up pretty soon.
All sounds so delightful to a swimmer.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say how, like, if I'm in the meet or not. I'm pretty sure, like, it's on. Well, anybody in athletics, it's on next Friday.
If anyone knows, please let Kira know if she's racing.
I know I'm racing, but I don't know if they've officially released the start list.
Well, if they have released the start list, that's when you're next competing.
Yes.
Okay, that's class. And I hope.
And I ran a PB there the last time. So
are you aiming for another sub 2 or?
So it's a K. So I'm just, to be honest, I want to go and try to run some PBs this year and just keep getting faster. And with the confidence off that sub 2 800, sure, you only add 200 onto it.
It's actually amazing what a good race can do for your brain, just for your confidence going into a competition. Now you're probably full of confidence and you can't wait to see what you can do.
Oh, definitely. And as well, having done that, it's made my agent's job a lot easier to get me into some of the meets around the circuit. Like I'm hopefully going to race a few more diamond leagues this season and have a chance to have an Irish person up there and that little tricolour beside my name. So it's good because it's not often that we have an Irish athlete in a diamond league. So it's great and give the Irish public something to watch and cheer as it's on TV. So I'm excited.
That's the infectious enthusiasm of Kieran McGee, who's having an absolutely sensational season as it stands at the moment. What are we at? 24 minutes past 9. Let's welcome Joe Molloy to the show. Joe, how are you?
The infectious enthusiasm of Joe Molloy.
I mean, Owen has basically been falling asleep. He stayed up to watch the whole thing, up to and including the trophy presentation. So I don't know what your energy levels are like.
I'm okay. I mean, it was brilliant stuff.
Colin Morikawa, the birth of a phenomenon. I mean, we kind of knew he was a phenomenon, but the way that you close out your first major, so he's won 50% of the majors he's played in. That's not a bad stat. And what happened for people who are just waking up and kind of trying to get to grips with, well, how did the golf go? Who's this Morikawa guy? What happened?
Well, it was brilliant, I have to say. I mean, I wasn't sure if I'd stay up and watch the full thing, but I mean, really, right from moment one, when it became obvious that Brooks Koepka was double-crossing himself and sending everything left and in massive trouble, this tournament kind of exploded open, you know? And suddenly everyone had to think, well, actually, who's going to win now? And we got to a point where, I'd say around back nine, certainly, there were 5 or 6 players tied for the lead, and then another 2, 3, 4 within a shot, and all, I mean, quality, pretty much all the way through. So every shot, it felt, or every putt on the green felt like it was for a tie of the lead, or to take the outright lead, or, you know, to put yourself massively in contention. So there was a degree of chaos for about 2 hours. You know, the TV was struggling to keep up, and here and there and everywhere. And someone was going to emerge, and everybody was stuck on 10 under for a lot of this tournament, for the kind of 5, 6 holes around the turn. And you knew someone would emerge, and it was Morikawa, and just in amazing fashion. I mean, the thing about Morikawa, as you said, I mean, he's a sensation and has been for a while. Even before this tournament, Morikawa had more wins than missed cuts. So he turned pro last year. He's 23 years of age, where people first started to really notice him. I mean, he won in his first year on tour, but then this year and late last year, he never missed a cut. He was often thereabouts. It was just really impressive, really solid, and he's a unbelievably mature 23-year-old. And his game is not jaw-dropping. Like, Morikawa doesn't hit a shot and you go, oh my God, look at this. The ball is traveling forever. This is insane. He is just precision. Now, when I say he doesn't hit the ball a long way, his average drive is 296 yards. But in the world of the PGA Tour, that's I think he's like, you know, top 80 for distance. But 296 is plenty when you're as good as him. His irons are brilliant. He has a dodgy putt in him. Might be the concern. Takes a long time over certain putts. He re-emerged post-lockdown, and he got into a playoff with Daniel Berger in one of the first tournaments, and I'd say he missed a 3 or 4 footer. And so you thought, oh, that's a bit of a chink, and that might damage him. But he came back a couple of weeks later at Muirfield against Justin Thomas, who, you know, went on to be world number 1. And interestingly, he went for broke in that tournament, like real cojones, on the 14th drivable par 4. And this echoes what happens last night, is the bow I'm going to put wrapping it all. He was against Justin Thomas a couple of weeks ago at Muirfield, tough course, par 4, 14th, water on the right. He watched the player he was playing with go into that water trying to drive it, and he still stood up and he drove the green, and he got himself into a playoff. Made up 3 shots on Justin Thomas in the last 3 or 4 holes, won in a playoff, spectacular. And everybody thought at that point, so about 4 or 5 weeks ago, wow, you know, he's got this rock solid game, he's got temperament, and he's got some balls as well. You know, real go for it when it counts stuff. So fast forward to last night. He gets it. One of the few bad shots he hits is on 14, and he's just shy of the green. And you think, oof, this will test his nerve. And he chips in. You know, sometimes great players have these moments. You think of Tiger at Augusta in 05, at 16. Not likening him or anyone to Tiger, but, you know, a big moment at a big time in a major, chipped in. That was him taking the lead. So suddenly everyone's, you know, so you've got Casey there, you've got Dustin Johnson there, you've got quality all the way through, and Matthew Wolff is there. Jason Day has this resurgence. DeChambeau is like coming back after wobbling earlier. They're all looking at the leaderboard. Morikawa has a 1-shot lead. So again, you're thinking, that's pressure. Like, he's 23. He's never been in this scenario before. He gets to the 16th. The 16th was always going to be decisive. Even McGinley at the start of the broadcast said, I can't wait till they get to 16. That could, you know, let's see who does what. It's a drivable par 4. On the Wednesday, Morikawa was playing his practice round, and he was talking to an analyst for the Golf Channel, Colt Knost, former player. And Knost sort of said to him, are you going to go for this, when we get into the tournament? And Morikawa, sensible, mature chap that he is, said to Knost on the Wednesday, no, it's too windy. Don't like it. It's tight. I'm just going to, knock it up there and knock it on and take my chances with a wedge. Fast forward to Sunday. He goes for it. Turns to his driver, says, yeah, let's do this. And I mean, the thing about this guy, Ger, is he is just so straight off the tee. I mean, it's this baby fade and it's perfect. It bounces on. He's got 6-7 feet for eagle and he rolls it in beautifully. I mean, again, under pressure, nerves. I mean, we would all be gripping it and cozying it up there for a tap and birdie. He rolled it in. Suddenly he's 2 shots clear. There's this great shot of Paul Casey on the 17th tee, peering back. He sees the ball land. And he's like, oh, that's Morikawa. And afterwards, Casey just said, I didn't lose it, and he didn't. Casey finished 2 shots back, but it was this incredible drama of him looking to see, oh, I've seen the ball land. Is that Morikawa's ball? And then he gave a smile to his caddy as if to say, what do you do about that? What do you do about that? So it's phenomenal. 23, youngest US PGA winner, bar Tiger and Jack. As you said, he's played in 2 of these things. He looked like he'd played in 20. Dustin Johnson, not to rag on Dustin, made several strategic errors. He will never look that comfortable on a Sunday. He will never think that clearly on a Sunday of a major. Some people just don't have it. This guy has it. And yeah, I mean, again, it's not jaw-dropping, but I think what we're looking at here is a guy who could win 2 or 3 of these and 20 PGA Tour titles and will be a regular in the top 15 world rankings for the next 10, 15 years. I think you're now looking at a guy that will be touching on in a lot of major previews for the next decade plus. So, this isn't a flash in the pan. This isn't a Sean McKeel kind of thing.
No, it certainly feels like it's it's the birth of a superstar who I'd say that might actually be the lower end of the scale when you consider how quickly he's got to grips with life on the tour.
It could well be. It could well be. I mean, if you said a year ago when he was turning pro then that this guy was really good, I would have estimated in his first year, well, he might get a PGA Tour win, maybe 2. You wouldn't have said 2 wins and a major in this fashion. And that's with, having missed 4 or 5 months of the season as well. So he's already surpassed what you could say are reasonable expectations. I remember when he won a couple of weeks back against Justin Thomas at Muirfield. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's the quality of who he beat and the course. He did an interview a couple of days later, and man, he's smart. Like he's a really intelligent bloke, but he was ambitious and he was politely trying to say to the interviewer, no, stop trying to suggest this is my season done now and I can rest up. He was kind of saying, this is where I think I was going to be, and he's got big plans. Put it this way, he's not lighting up the cigars and saying, I'm done now. Some players win a major and it's like, oh, thank God, I've won the major. That is off my back, and
he's not Darren Clark.
Darren Clark, you Jimmy Walker, you maybe to some extent, to a lesser extent, Jason Day, like a bunch of guys. And it's, geez, I mean, you've won a major. Your epitaph is written, your tombstone is set, your obituary is there. You have won a major. You're a major winner. So lots of players, understandably, kind of think, whew. Whereas I do think, I'm saying 2 or 3. I'd say he's probably got 5 or 6 in his mind. I wouldn't be surprised.
It's great that this is exactly how it happened as well, that driving the green was the winning shot, but driving the green didn't come from a Bryson DeChambeau or Brooks Koepka. Like, does this do we need to reevaluate a little bit, Joe, how dramatic we've been about the changing face of golf over the last little while, that bigger isn't necessarily better?
That's a very interesting question, yeah. Probably not still, so who's next to him? Paul Casey gets it out there, but he's a precision player, you would say. I mean, he's big, but he's a precision player. But then you did, to be fair, have Dustin Johnson, you had Matthew Wolff, you had Bryson DeChambeau, you had Tony Finau. Like, you still had, length is, and always will be a massive advantage. But I think your point is right. Like, it's nice for golf that this leaderboard didn't end up just being Bryson, Dustin, Matthew Wolff and Tony Finau, bombers only. It's nice that a guy who can hit it a measly 296 yards off the tee average, which, is still very decent. But it was nice that, in a sense, it was a victory for precision and strategy and nerve. And that stuff will all count, like intelligence as well. You know, Dustin Johnson twice on the back nine. There's like 2 holes. The par 5 10th. So I was around the 7th or 8th or 9th, because I've watched a lot of Morikawa, and I was thinking, he's flushing everything. Like everybody else was saving pars, he was tapping in for par. You know, I was like, this guy, he's taken this game that we've seen from the last couple of weeks, precision, hitting every fairway, and he's taken it to a major Sunday. He's in this. And I was conscious Dustin Johnson still had the par 5 10th. And like, Johnson will do it. The one place you couldn't go in that par 5 10th was into the left bunker. He's middle of the fairway with his second shot. You know, he's long. He just needs to find the middle of the green, roll it up, tap in for his birdie. He's back in the lead. And of course, he goes left into the bunker, short side himself. Doesn't make a birdie on one of the 2 par 5s in the course. And that's Johnson, and that's a big bomber who that type of play will still thankfully be beaten by what Morikawa can bring.
We've got to talk about Rory McIlroy and the long wait for relevance in a major continues. He's in the papers today defending Dustin Johnson against Brooks Koepka, getting sucked into somebody else's psychodrama as opposed to actually just being somebody who is focused entirely on trying to win. And that's unfair because obviously he gets asked a question and he answers it, and that's what we want from him. But
yeah,
Rory's life has changed a lot over the last couple of years, and I think he's become a much better person who is like taking a leadership role in the sport, and I absolutely 100% applaud him for that. Some balance needs to come back here, and it's kind of hard to hold him too much to account for that because before lockdown he was playing really well. So
yeah,
where is he? What's happening?
I don't know. Like if you start with the point you made about him being a leader in the game, he is the strongest voice in the game now. He's the leader. When Premier League golf were and they still to a point are trying to take over the tour, it was McIlroy who said, I'm not doing this. And that almost put the whole thing to bed. And he gives his opinion on everything, quite honestly. Makes mistakes, doubles back on himself and says, I got that wrong. I made a mistake there. I shouldn't have said that. There's a routine thing with McIlroy. But in some ways, you can kind of admire that. As you said, he's always asked about everything. So he's going to make mistakes. I mean, it's hard to be too critical because he was in such amazing form pre-lockdown. It's railroaded his career. As I said to you guys on Thursday, it did seem in April, like he was going to be the Masters winner in waiting. And we'll never know. But he was red hot then. He had 7 consecutive top 5s. He was sharp. Lockdown happens. I would like someone to have asked him how much he was able to practice or how much he practiced or, how do you explain it? He's been vaguish in some of his answers, and that's fair enough. You take this week, I mean, the standout thing he did, and it is a standout thing, and it'll be, you be remembered in some ways as much as a lot of the play is. In the second round, he was just shy of a green. He was in the rough. An ESPN reporter stood on his ball and knocked it down further. And the ESPN reporter, she was very apologetic, and she let the rules officials know. And so the rule there is you get to replace your ball. And they replaced the ball, and they were ready to go. Rules official was happy. And McIlroy said, and he wasn't making a big deal about it. He probably didn't even know he could be heard, or, he wasn't, the camera wasn't right on top of him. But he said, that's still too good a lie, I think. I'm not happy with that. His logic was if she couldn't see the ball and stepped on it, it had to be nestled down further. So he with his drop, he got it down even further into this horrible rough and made his bogey. And it was an exhibition of class and integrity. And afterwards he said, look, I'm all about the rules. I'd rather be on the wrong side of them than get away with something. You contrast that to Bryson DeChambeau looking for a ruling because there's 2 ants near his ball.
Yeah.
The previous week. So there is a class to him. Like there really is. You have to say that. But if you want the technical analysis, he's getting the club stuck behind him, and it's killing him on his wedges in particular. And Paul McGinley talked about it, and this is a common miss for him. His driving was okay. Tough driving course. His driving was okay. His wedges killed him. Too often, and too often his wedges have been a weak aspect of his play, relatively speaking, and he had 1 or 2 bad moments with the putter as well. Equally, he hit some like second round as an example, Ger. First hole, beautiful drive, wedge from 118 yards, stone dead, birdie. And you think, okay, it's McIlroy. Second hole, beautiful drive, best drive of his bunch. He's 135-6 yards from the green, and the wedge is so bad he practically misses the green. It's short and right. He's just flared it up, club stuck inside him. And then third hole or fourth, there's a par 3 then pretty soon afterwards. Again, right with an iron in his hand, not a big iron, not a massively long iron. Like how do you explain that? He's as good a golfer as there is on the planet when he's playing well, and yet aspects like that are just deserting him. And it's 6 years and counting now. I mean, he needs to knuckle down, like he really does. You look at that leaderboard last night, Morikawa 23, Matthew Wolff young coming through, DeChambeau. I'd say DeChambeau feels validated by how this experiment went, tied 4th. Finau's young, Xander Schauffele's coming, Cameron Champ is coming, John Ram is coming, Daniel Berger is tied 13th. He's a name you won't remember from this tournament. He's coming. Like McIlroy on his day is still not just in that company, but I would say the best of that company.
Yeah.
But on his day,
it's few and far between at the moment.
At the moment, and even just a final point, even in pre-lockdown, the criticism, if you want to be very critical, is he had those 7 consecutive top 5s. Like, really, shouldn't there have been a win in there? If you're judging him by the absolute standards, and there wasn't. So it was great form, and yet at the time, unfairly or otherwise, we were saying, oh, does McIlroy have a problem closing? Why isn't he winning on a Sunday when he's in contention? But to not even be in a contention for this US PGA and to be 6 years and counting, it's very worrying. I don't know why it's so volatile. Maybe that's the best way of summing it up. I don't know why it's all or nothing. Like, why he can't be more in the mix on a Sunday and giving himself more chances. I don't know. I'd really love him to chat about it openly, and maybe he'll do that because he often does.
Yeah, no, that's the best thing about him, is that he always answers the questions, sometimes even when he shouldn't. Joe, great stuff. Thanks a million.
All right, lads. See you.
It's Joe Molloy there. You can see more of Joe tonight from 7 o'clock on Off the Ball. The best place to get that is obviously on the OTB Sports app. We didn't even get into Big Mouth Brooks, but I'm sure they'll talk about that on the show tonight. Now, at 9:41 this morning, it's time for Deal or No Deal.
We had your old teammate on the show on Friday. He reckons Gareth Bale, now aged 31.
I signed for them after the Euros. After my first day's training on driving home, I was actually thinking, regretting what I've done. Like I walked into a circus. It's amazing, isn't it?
UEFA Champions League nights are back, and to celebrate, OTB has teamed up with Pepsi Max and Doritos, and we're announcing a special remote roadshow live on the 20th of August, which is 10 days away now. We also have a special private video call with David Myler for 5 lucky winners. Not only do you get to ask the questions, you'll also land a Pepsi Max and Doritos hamper. For your chance to win tickets to either of these amazing experiences, keep an eye on OTB's social channels over the next week, or search OTB Sports in the App Store. Pepsi Max and Doritos, it's back. Get ready. It is indeed back. And so is Deal or No Deal. Phil, good morning to you.
Good morning. How are you doing?
The breaking news over the last hour was that Jadon Sancho was getting on a plane. I love this time of the year where we have drones following people around, footballers trying to shoot it out of the sky with their kicks, and breathless reports of logistical details. Jadon Sancho is going to Switzerland on a training camp with Manchester United. Not with Manchester United, with Borussia Dortmund. He's not going to Manchester United.
Plane trackers are very popular these days. We want to see where the flight is going. But yeah, today was the day, wasn't it? The 10th of August. That was when Dortmund said, we're going on our pre-season tour, and you got to come up with the cash now before that, or else he comes with us. And their whole point is that they don't want to be disrupting their pre-season to have to let Sancho go off and talk to Manchester United. So what does that mean? We knew United weren't going to get this deal done as soon as they could, because they never do. But it's hard to know what happens now.
I thought they'd learned their lessons from the last time they made a signing. It was really good and he had a big impact in the team and it really worked out. So do another one the same way. Learn.
Yeah, but even the Bruno Fernandes signing, that dragged on.
I know, and it was the wrong window.
Yeah. So what happens is if United don't win the Europa League, now they have a great chance obviously playing Copenhagen. You'd imagine that's a a given, and then they could play Wolves or Sevilla in a semi-final, and who knows, they could get Inter Milan in a final, which would be that's the one we want to see, given all the former United players playing for Inter Milan. But if they don't win it, then Solskjaer gets the questions. Who do you want to bring in? Jadon Sancho deal hasn't happened yet. Are you disappointed? So it just causes it just creates headlines that they don't need, because what we have to remember is United have finished third in the Premier League. The Bruno Fernandes signing worked out so well for them. They've got their players back fit. Martial finally looks like he could be the number 9 that they need, and Sancho would definitely add that quality. But
is this deal finished now? Do you think this deal is actually finished?
I don't know if it could be finished.
7 out of 10 out of 10, 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10. Is it now? Are we now? What are you at now?
I'm thinking still 6 or 7, but you're talking about this window. This could happen now in the next window. Dortmund are very well organised, because they obviously probably have identified a few players that they would bring in to replace Sancho. But if the money hasn't been, and there's no contact being made, then Dortmund are thinking we don't need to bring in this replacement. So Sancho's our player, and that's great for Dortmund, because they obviously need Sancho in their team if they're going to try and beat Bayern Munich for a Bundesliga title.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Okay, let's move on to Liverpool, because the Sancho story is obviously something that we're going to continue to do again and again and again. Liverpool are reported to be planning to pay $35 million for Wales and Bournemouth midfielder David Brooks. Everton, Spurs and West Ham are also interested in the player, but the Sun this morning report that the champions are the front runners to get his signature. Do you expect this to happen, Phil, and where does he fit into Klopp's plans?
I don't think it will happen. What's amazed me so far during the transfer window is the amount of players being linked with Liverpool who, not so long ago, Jurgen Klopp basically said, we're not going to be doing much, because obviously COVID-19's had a huge impact on the way the money is being distributed around football, and they missed out on Timo Werner. A lot of people think that was all down to money. Some say if Klopp really wanted them, they could have come up with the money for him. But Liverpool seem to be getting linked with a lot of players, and I just don't see why they would pay 35 million for Brooks. Serious potential. Obviously, we didn't see much of him last season because of a serious ankle injury, but the season before, he scored 7 goals, and you could see...
Where does he play?
You could play him in... See, I don't even know if he suits the 4-3-3. Like, he tends to play in the right wing. He can cut inside. There's a lad called Mo Salah plays there. He's handy enough. Liverpool... This is the problem Liverpool are going to have, where their front three are so good. You need players that are backup, but there's definitely a drop-off, obviously, when one of the three isn't there. Divock Origi or whoever it is, if it's Shaqiri.
Isn't now the time to be buying those replacements, though?
Sorry, Phil, could this guy be like the new Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain? As in, obviously he's more used to playing as a right midfielder. I know Oxlade-Chamberlain was more of a winger, but could he be converted more into the midfield three rather than the front three?
Well, the funny thing about Oxlade-Chamberlain is the best game I've seen him play for Liverpool was the Atletico Madrid game, which obviously Liverpool still lost, but he played in the midfield three and he was brilliant. And then you've seen him towards the end of the season. I know Liverpool had the league wrapped up, but sometimes they played him on the right-hand side, where obviously Salah usually plays. And something that can happen to Oxlade-Chamberlain is he plays in so many different positions that he doesn't actually get to specialise in one, when the best game he's played, as I said, was in the midfield three. Brooks could be in that category where he could play a few different positions. They're handy players to have, but are they going to be consistent for you? Where Oxlade-Chamberlain was so good against Atletico, but he hasn't really had a chance to play in that position much since.
Olympiacos and Greek left-back Kostas Tsimikas, is that where we're going with?
Tsimikas, yeah.
24 years of age, is expected to join Liverpool for £11.75 million sterling on 50 grand a week. These seem like old figures from a different era, where players were only getting 50 grand a week when you signed for a club like Liverpool for only 11 million. Do Liverpool need another left-back option? Is this it? That's them done? They're going to sign him and they'll be happy?
Yeah, I think so. Natural left-footed. Obviously, we spoke last week about Lewis coming from Norwich, and again, whoever comes, they know they're going to be the backup to Andy Robertson, but they do need that natural left back for a replacement. I touched on it last week when Robertson didn't play the Merseyside derby. You had Milner, who went off with a hamstring injury. Joe Gomez came on then. So you had two right-footed left backs, which both can do a good job, but just they don't have that natural width where you want your full-backs touching the sidelines. And Tsimikas, he's very similar to Robertson, and he's got that pace, and he's quite good at setting up goals. So definitely he has European experience as well. Would have played in the Champions League this season, would have played Europa League, would have played in the recent game against Wolves, played against Arsenal as well, would have played against Spurs in the Champions League. So he has European experience. Obviously, if you're coming from Olympiacos as well, you're used to playing at the high end of the Greek league. Obviously, it's not as good as the Premier League, but yeah, this could be a good signing for Liverpool. But Robertson needs sometimes to be given a few games out because the way he plays, it's so attritional. So
this is a 9 out of 10 of either of these two players, and it looks like Costas is the one that they're going to go for.
Yeah, I think so. I think that we'll get news on this being a done deal fairly soon.
Okay, I didn't get a rating for the Brooks signing.
I'm thinking 4.
Okay, so you don't think that's going to happen. We've talked about the Jadon Sancho thing. Bild are reporting that Dortmund are going to offer Sancho a massive new contract, which presumably will have a buyout clause that will be very clear. You just pay this fee and then away he goes. Keep an eye on otbsports.com for the details of that on the app. French frontman Alexander Lacazette, we're moving on to Arsenal, is expected to swap Arsenal for Atletico Madrid in a deal worth 30 million if Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang signs his new deal, which strong indications over the weekend were that was going to happen. Owen, as an Arsenal fan, what do you think of this?
I think it'll be a disaster if Arsenal let him go, like absolute disaster. I think he's been brilliant since the restart. I think he is central to how Mikel Arteta plays. He doesn't get all the plaudits. In fact, he actually gets slated quite a bit, I would have thought, by Arsenal fans because he doesn't pop up with a number of goals. But if you watched him in recent weeks, the way he drops deep, the way he is central to Arsenal in possession, especially when they're under the cosh in those games against Liverpool and Manchester City, they come to mind. Against Liverpool, he was outstanding that night. I think that this guy is far more important to Arsenal than meets the eye, and not as important as Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, but potentially the second most important piece of business they'll do this summer is keeping Lacazette as well as Aubameyang. Nailed on starter from my perspective, and that's two of your front three locked down if you manage to keep him. I think this would be a disaster if he leaves, and a lot of people will say that's nonsense.
Phil, why is he only 30 million? Why is that seems cheap for somebody who's like is scoring goals, is good, is creative, is, as we've seen from Lewandowski, has 2 or 3 years at his peak at 29. It's like he's not old.
Yeah, I'm not sure I buy into the theory of Owen's eulogising of Alexander Lacazette. I think a decent player, but I like the thoughts of if Aubameyang signs his new deal, he moves into the centre, then Willian plays on the left. I just think you've got a far better front three there, a more dynamic front three. And at times, watching Lacazette this season, when he's good, yeah, he can have his good games, but I kind of saw him in the last few games of the season, seems to be blowing a bit, where I wonder what his stamina levels were like. And
I don't know, Phil. If you're signing Willian, I think he starts on the right hand side. I think Pepe is the one in trouble, and I think the role Lacazette has been playing is not the out and out number 9. It is more of a deep line number 9 who's actually popped into midfield positions at time. Like the first game of the restart, Arsenal got crushed in midfield. They couldn't pass the ball out of their own half. Now Lacazette drops deep, and he is a vital cog in Arsenal's transition. I'm telling you, this is not a good moment for Arsenal if Lacazette goes. He doesn't score any goals, but it doesn't matter. He is vital to them in possession. And I think a front three of Aubameyang, Lacazette, Willian mightn't actually be that bad next season. Now, the only thing is that they do have Martinelli to come through, and they've got another potentially outstanding attacker to come through there in him. So maybe they're looking at that if they're going to let him go.
So you just kicked Nicola Pepe to the side.
He's not been good in recent weeks. Like, he's obviously got a wand of a left foot. Nobody will ever forget his 2 free kicks against Vitoria Guimarães in the Europa League, and we'll thank you for that, Pepe. No, I still think there's a future for Pepe. I think the second season will always be kind to a player like that. But if they're signing Willian, I certainly see him as more of a right-sided player. But maybe you know better than I do, and there could actually be a situation where Lacazette goes and the front three is actually Willian, Pepe and Aubameyang.
If only Mesut Ozil could somehow fit into this jigsaw.
He doesn't.
The 30 million that they're going to get from Atletico Madrid, there are talks today in one of the papers that 18 million of that is going to be ring-fenced and given straight to Mesut Ozil to get the hell out of there. This is the scenario we find ourselves in. They will heavily subsidise his wages if anybody is willing to take him off their books, or they will pay up his contract in full to get him out. This is a remarkable scenario we find ourselves in at the moment. Phil, what's going to happen?
It's clear Ozil doesn't fit in, and sometimes you hear of Arsenal not having that creative spark at times, and Ozil is a creative player, but he doesn't fit into the way Arteta wants to play, with the intensity he wants to play. And we've been speaking about this for, it seems like just an age now with Ozil, that different managers, Emery was the same, it just didn't work. So they have to get him off the books. It's not easy though, and you think of Sanchez has just left Manchester United. He's obviously made his deal to Inter Milan a permanent one, but they have to come to some sort of an agreement where United have to pay a bit of a compensation package to him. So, but nowhere near the numbers that Arsenal would have to pay to get rid of Mesut Ozil, and that's the problem. Obviously, we saw what happened with Arsenal off the pitch last week, and Ozil is there's always a cheap shot there for Ozil because he commands such a high salary, but it's not his fault. The club have to look at what they did. They had Mesut Ozil and Alexis Sanchez. They obviously decided, because Sanchez went, that they were going to try and hold on to Ozil. They paid him way too much money, and pretty much since he signed that new contract, he hasn't done very much. And I seem to remember he had a great game against Leicester. That was about it, from what I remember.
Yeah, rivals for the top four. Obviously, he likes the big games. A reminder, OTB AM is live in association with Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. Shane Duffy could be on his way to West Brom. The promoted club were linked with the Irish defender in yesterday's Mail on Sunday. His current contract runs until 2023. Would it be a shrewd move to bring him and to bring his experience to the side? Should Duffy be eyeing a move to a more established Premier League club? Is he good enough?
Yeah, it's funny how it worked out, because there was talk of him going back to Everton, and since Graham Potter's come in, he obviously hasn't given Shane Duffy as much game time. Adam Webster has got the nod because we were so used to the Duncan Duffy combo, but I think Shane Duffy needs to get first team football, and probably just even for his international career as well, because we know how good he is when he plays for Ireland. But Stephen Kenny has come in, and he knows a lot of these young players, the likes of O'Shea, obviously could be a future teammate of Shane Duffy's at West Brom, but Conor Masterson, these kind of players. John Egan's obviously had a great season in the Premier League. So Shane Duffy has to be thinking, you want to get first team football, and West Brom wouldn't be a bad move for him, because they've got players that have played in the Premier League. Bilic is obviously managed in the Premier League, so they'd be confident enough that they can actually do something in the Premier League next season.
All right, give me an out of 10.
We might go with an 8 out of 10.
Okay, that's the legitimacy rating, 8 out of 10 for that one. Bournemouth's Joshua King could be on the way to Paris Saint-Germain, according to The Sun. Lazio and Roma are also interested in the 28-year-old. His valuation is expected to be at least 25 million. He's entering the final year of his contract. Is he good enough to make the jump to that level, Phil?
I think he could definitely play for Roma. Lazio obviously have Immobile banging in goals, if he can fit into that system. And then with PSG, you think of Choupo-Moting plays for PSG. So in my eyes, Josh King is better than Choupo-Moting. So that definitely, there's plenty of optimism there if you're Josh King. Think if Choupo-Moting's getting game time at PSG, I can certainly get a game. And they absolutely stroll the league every season, so you can definitely get game time in the league, maybe be a bit part player in the Champions League. But I think a pretty decent player. There was talk of him going back to United at one stage. Obviously they brought in Ighalo, but there was strong reports that he was going to sign for Manchester United last January, but they obviously went for the Ighalo deal instead. Again, I actually think King would be a better option than Ighalo. But
out of 10? 25 million is not bad price for somebody who's going to be a Premier League standard striker, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, does he want to stay in the Premier League? He's also been linked with Newcastle as well, so he'll definitely have his choice anyway. He can go Premier League, or he can go abroad and play in the top flight somewhere else. I think a decent player.
All right, 2 final quick ones. I just need quick out of 10s for these. With the Saudi deal for now dead, Newcastle fans are no longer dreaming of a long summer of big money signings. Instead, they're shopping in the bargain basement. Could they land out of contract free agent Jeff Hendrick on a free transfer? Would Newcastle be a smart move for the versatile Irish midfielder? Out of 10?
I'm going to say 7. Like, if he stays in the Premier League, it's good news for him. Who's going to be managing them, we don't know. It could be a case that he gets a move, he thinks he's going to play for Steve Bruce, and then the takeover goes through, and then Steve Bruce is no longer the manager.
Yeah. Finally, for now, the Telegraph report that Barcelona want to bring in Bernardo Silva to the club. His contract runs to 2025, which is 5 years from now, so he's not going to be cheap. Barca are expected to tell the creative midfielder they want to rebuild with him as one of their key players. The legitimacy rating here, and do Barcelona need to sign 3 Bernardo Silvas?
They could probably do it signing about 5 or 6, but yeah, this guy, when he signed for Monaco, obviously we knew how good he was, and he was influential in City's season last season, but hasn't got as much game time as I thought he would. I thought he could be a natural replacement for David Silva, playing that system with De Bruyne, even playing the right at the 3, but Guardiola went for Foden the other night against Real Madrid, so what does that suggest? Maybe he was confident he could get the job done against Real, and he's saving Bernardo Silva for later on in the competition, but a quality player, and obviously would suit the technicality of the way Barcelona are trying to play. But I don't think City are going to let him go, considering they've just had to let Leroy Sané go.
OK, so 4 out of 10?
I'm going to say 3.
3 out of 10 for that one. All right, deal or no deal in the books for today?
I signed for them after the Euros. After my first day's training, I was driving home. I was actually thinking, regretting what we're doing. Like I walked into a circus. It's amazing, isn't it?
Oh, and we managed to keep you awake for the entire show. Well done.
Well done to you. Well, really, for keeping me awake, I think, is what a congratulations should lie.
That's it for OTB AM this morning. If you missed anything, you can catch it back through the OTB AM podcast. Subscribe to that. It's timestamped as well, so you can flick through it for whichever bits you want. You can just search for OTB Sports and download the app. OTB is live tonight from 7 o'clock with Joe Molloy. They'll have the golf, Monday Night Rugby, the football show, and live updates, of course, from tonight's Europa League. OTB AM is live weekdays from 7:30. We'll see you tomorrow. Best of luck.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.